Maybe I can
All
cross
right.
post on Books of Horror.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it looks like yeah. So we are officially live right now. So yeah, this is the very first time I've actually done this. So I really
Same
appreciate
here.
you. Awesome. So if yeah, I guess if it crashes and burns and becomes the forbidden thing that shall not be talked about, then we're both on the same sinking ship. So so it works out pretty well. So.
Bring it. You got the camera on me too, so I can't even lie. I can't even play poker.
Exactly. So no, this is cool because the nice thing about this is that um, it's also recording it as well, so that we'll also, not only will we have our live chat here, and hopefully the odd person comes in and out. Maybe we'll see somebody streak across the screen here or something. Um, but even if any of that doesn't happen, the nice thing is that I'm still going to be able to post that up onto my YouTube channel. So I can, you can literally say anything you say or can or will be heard or whatever for those in here. But for the stuff that's going to go up on my actual YouTube channel, that's something I'll edit as need be and get that up there. So I think that'll be pretty good. So yeah, I wasn't sure if we are going to get crickets or the odd person in that. So I don't know how this thing works. I know, um, it's kind of a weird time of the day as well for that sort of thing. So I know for myself, if I usually come across a live show, like I'll jump into it kind of on medias, it's things are already kind of happening, whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised if the odd person pops in. So
I've done these as an audience member. I sort of stalk Josh Mallerman whenever he does an interview on a Zoom or a live. And yes, crickets. You'd be surprised. Like maybe
right.
5 or 6 people, maybe 15, but maybe only one of them even has read one of his books. So I'm in his fan group and I just start hitting him with questions if no one else does. It becomes the Hans and Josh show. And I don't know if he wants me to stop asking him questions or to keep going. I have to check myself and say, should I stop?
I
Give
know,
someone
right? Well,
else a
then
chance.
you could kind of repost it, I guess, and repurpose it as an interview that you did. So there's that maybe. So, hey Hans, I wonder if I can ask you one quick favor. Are you able to lower your cam a little bit? Because it looks like we can just see you from the chin up. There we go. Perfect. Cool. That's a good shot of you and your books all at once. So cool. Appreciate that. So. Yeah, I know. I used to do the same thing, and it was funny because I did one chat before, and it was um, I'm not going to call him out by name. You can sift through my stuff and see who I'm talking about. But I guess he was like really close because he wanted to make sure that he was fully visible in that. But it was funny because I used Zoom at the time, and Zoom automatically it's voice activated, so whoever's talking, that's what the camera zooms in on. So I'd be, for example, not quite out this far back, but I used to be closer too. But it would go from me and all of a sudden to him, and he'd be like right there, like in your face. So I was thinking afterwards, I'm like, I should have maybe asked him to like back up a couple steps or something, but I never did. So that's okay. It's a learning process. Um, so I'm now. You mentioned Hans that you haven't really done one of these before, or at least been a part of it, kind of thing. But have you actually been invited to doing one of these, like not one of these, but like an interview in general for the books of horror, or do you know of anybody else that has been?
There, right after you asked me, someone else asked me, but
That's
had to
funny.
do it in the odd godly early morning. And I'm like, nah, I can't do the morning, man.
Yeah,
So
mornings
I
are
was like,
tough.
I'll stick with Rick and
Cool.
I'll do this and we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It's embarrassing to even have an interview. I'm not sure what I have to offer, but just a Facebook group admin. Uh,
Yeah.
but that group, Books of Horror, has just exploded, and
I know, eh?
it's amazing. I meant to do this before the interview, was to check when the group had actually started.
Yeah,
And
that
when
was
I
one of the things I
joined,
wanted to ask you about. So I didn't know if I could check myself other than try to go to the
um,
pits of the abyss and
there
look at
is
the
a way
last
to
ones.
look. And do you remember? It was about 6 months ago. Facebook did something, and the oldest post in every group was on the top of the
That's
feed.
right. That's right. Yeah, a bunch of us thought we were all going crazy.
And that's when I got to look at like the very earliest post. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But here's a trick anybody can do.
Okay.
If you scroll to the top of Books of Horror and click on members, and it'll take you to
Okay.
another screen that lists all the members. And then if you find yourself, click on your name and your entire history in the group. For example, I just clicked on my name and I joined May 7th, 2016. So
Okay.
just over 6 years. And I think
That's
when I
cool. Yeah,
joined,
I
I
think
might
I've
have
only
been,
been here for a couple of years.
I think I was one of the first 100 members. And the group was started by Antonio Orozco. And I was
Okay.
invited by him and RJ Rolls to help admin the group. And that was a very, very early time. And since then, we've added two more, Tiffany Copeland and Denise. I don't want to screw up her name.
Oh, Hargrave or Har
Denise Hargrove and Tiffany
is it
Copeland.
Hargrave? Hargrove? Okay.
Hargrove.
Okay.
And so it's just the four of
Okay.
us, 2 men and 2 girls, and Antonia left. I'm not sure why. So the
Yeah.
founder's gone, and it's just us four, like four horsemen, and that's it. But we've talked about getting other admins, but when we started, all of us, there was like under 1,000 members, and now it's growing to almost 25,000 people.
I know. I put in my shout out for this chat. I'm like 10,000 plus members, and I of course I looked after the fact, and I'm like, holy shit! Like that's just out of control. Like that's just incredible. Um,
I've never experienced something like that. The growth has been amazing. At any time there's a Facebook glitch, we get direct messages from everyone who can't post all of a sudden, and it's like what's that Led Zeppelin song when the levee
oh, the levee
breaks?
breaks. Yeah.
I can't get them all. I hope people don't get mad at me for not answering every direct message, but we really struggle. I got a job. I got to do stuff after this interview. I'm doing my laundry.
The life of a horseman.
I check on my phone, but I just can't type on that tiny little thing. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm the same way as well. Yeah. And I think that's, I don't know about you, but that's kind of a sign of the times, at least for me as well, is that one of the I guess qualifications now for me reading a book is that the text has to be a good size, or I have to have it on my e-reader. I can blow it up on my screen, because otherwise it's like good luck. Um, it sucks if you don't mind me giving a quick shout out. I got this 125th anniversary for Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book, and I'm so excited to get it. I'm excited to have it. And I opened it up like, the text is so small. It's got to be about like 11 points. So I'm like, I guess I'll be getting a magnifying glass and sitting out my old cob pipe and sitting in my rocking chair on the porch and reading that on a stormy day, I guess. Because unfortunately, that's a big criteria that I have now, is that I require a good size font. So.
There's a new edition of Dracula out that everyone is reading called Powers of Darkness. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's an edition of Dracula that was published in Sweden with a much larger page count. Right now I'm looking on my computer so I can give you the correct information here.
Sure.
But it's sold out from Centipede Press like immediately in minutes, and
That
a lot of
surprise
people have
me.
FOMO. See, Powers of Darkness. In 1899-1900, a Swedish newspaper published a translation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. This version, titled Powers of Darkness, is almost twice as long as the standard text published in 1897. It includes numerous scenes not included in the original text, along with a new ending and significant alterations of characters. The edition of Powers of Darkness should not be confused with the book of the same title published in 2017, which was an English translation of a highly truncated Icelandic. It just keeps going on. I had no idea there was so many differences in the book.
Oh, quick. I think it's okay to talk about this. It was said to me with the intention of it being released. I was actually one of the upcoming podcasts that I've got that I chatted with Dacre Stoker. He's the great granduncle of Bram Stoker. I chatted with him about a week ago, and one of the things that he was telling me, I wonder if this is the book that maybe he was talking about. Although he did mention that it's a book that's going to be coming out, I believe he said in the fall of this year, where it's an annotated version of Dracula, because there was a ton of scenes that they had to take out. The original publisher told Bram to take them out for a variety of reasons. He thought they might be too confusing. Like Bram Stoker was actually a manager for the I'm going to screw it up, the theater name out in Ireland, though, but it was a theater owned by Henry Irving, and Bram managed it for a number of years, and was a big Shakespeare fan himself, and a big play fan, and he had a lot of references to that. As well as others, he did a lot of research on the occult, of course, and spiritualism and that kind of stuff. And a lot of those things were in the book originally that he was asked to remove from the book, including the original ending, which I'm told is going to be in this annotated version. And again, I'm wondering, now, the one that you mentioned, then, is that one already out, or is that one set to be released still? Do you know?
The ordering went live, and it's shipped. It's shipped early this month.
Oh, okay. So I think this is a different one. Okay.
Well, it might be the same one. It has an exclusive new forward by Dacre Stoker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll be the one there.
So maybe, unlike other presses, this one is ahead of schedule, which is nice.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to have to ask Dacre about that, because I know he mentioned that there was some information that he discovered even just a couple of weeks ago. He had a researcher that got in touch with him, and they basically discovered this. And it's fascinating. I can't wait to get that one out as well, because I guess in some of Bram's lost journals or lost diaries, he had when he was talking about the actual castle. So that was, he did, I guess, a lot of his writing in what was called, which is now called Cruden Bay in Ireland, but it used to be called Port Errol, Errol, Errol. And there was Slane Castle that was there. It was in ruins at the time. At the time, the Earl of Errol lived there. And I guess they figured that Bram actually went and visited that because there's an octagonal room, and you can see that from a drone picture. And of course, now there's no roof because it was full of lead. They took it down and basically pieced it all out when it was disbanded back in the day. And you can actually see the octagonal room in there. But then Bram, I guess, did a ton of research on it that was actually more to do with a castle called Bran Castle, which no longer exists anymore. But in his diaries, I guess, Bram had wrote the actual longitude and the coordinates for a specific location of the castle. And if you look at it on the map, it's actually at the point of a volcano. So it wasn't active at the time. And of course, the original was that, as the band of heroes are coming in with Van Helsing, or the gypsies and that, and Van Helsing are coming in to kill off Dracula, this volcano erupts and Dracula runs into the castle, and of course it gets turned into ruins because of this volcano. because I guess Bram was so specific about that he's like, I need to have a castle that's going to be right at the point of a volcano that very well could erupt. And all these, so it was just fascinating, just the history of it all too. I found like Dracula was just, and Bram Stoker himself was just fascinating stuff.
Maybe the Centipede edition is a limited edition. It's possible there's a mass market edition planned.
Might be, yeah. Might be. I'm gonna have to ask him about that. So he'll
500 copies. Oh, 650 copies. That's it.
Wow, that's not too many at all.
I would imagine a lot more people would be interested. Did you know that when the 1930 Dracula was shot, there was a Spanish version filmed at the exact same time, using the same sets with different actors, shot at night. So it's a very famous 1930 Spanish version of Dracula that's a little sexier, a little more violent, without Bela Lugosi.
I know, so, if you can imagine that.
I think it might be the book adapted into more films than any other.
You're 100% right. Yeah, actually, it was funny. I swear some things, I'm not sure I believe in coincidences. Maybe a few months ago, I was at the community center with my my 3.5-year-old son. That's why I appreciate you doing the chat when you're doing it, because my girlfriend was able to actually take him out, and she's keeping him busy for a while. Otherwise, he'd just be a chaos gremlin. And we're at the community center. There was a bunch of books that they had out there. One of them was a 2019 Guinness Book of World Records. And I used to love those books when I was a kid. And I kid you not, I was just literally flipping through it, and at random I saw a little tiny clip of some movie trivia, and it was of Dracula, and it said, "Did you know Dracula was the most has a world record for being the most filmed monster, horror monster of all time?" And I can't remember the exact number now, but of course it was quite a bit. And then Frankenstein came in second. There was it was a pretty big gap between the two monster creatures. So, but yeah, it was pretty cool when I read that, and then yeah, it was really neat. A bit more than a coincidence, it felt like.
There's a lot of Dracula movies out there. I've watched all the Hammer Christopher Lee Dracula films in chronological order twice in my horror movie club.
Very cool. I can attest to that. I mean, vampires, Dracula, all that kind of stuff. They're always they were my first true love. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember it's probably my first foray that I into horror was like 7, 8 years old, and everything I could get, I just, no pun intended, I just sucked it up and ran with it.
What I used to do, I'm a big horror fan. Starting as a little kid, so I'm 52. Grew up in the 70s, and I lived in Boston, and the Boston Globe had a Sunday supplement. Every Sunday Globe had this listing of, it's called TV Week, and it was a little paper book. It was a little bit bigger than TV Guide, and from the minute I learned how to read, this was the first thing I grabbed from the Sunday paper before anybody else in my family, and it was a family of 5, could get it, because it listed every film broadcast on television for the week on every channel with descriptions. And I would grab it first thing Sunday morning and pour through all the movie listings and circle every single horror film, irregardless of when it was shown. And then I would plan my week around them. I'm talking, I'm 8 years old.
That's
and
awesome.
At 1:30 in the morning, Son of Kong would be on channel 56, and I would circle it, and it would be like a school night. It'd be Tuesday to 1:30 in the morning when everyone's asleep. 8-year-old Hans would go down to the kitchen, 2 flights of stairs, take the black and white television off the kitchen table, and bring it up to my bedroom, and watch Son of Kong at 1:30 in the morning. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, sneak back down, put the TV as if I hadn't done a thing, and then sneak back up and go to bed, exhausted, 4 hours later for school. And I was getting in trouble with my teachers because I was falling asleep in class, because I would sneak horror movies late at night, and my teachers actually called my parents. Why isn't Hans getting enough sleep? And they had no idea that I was doing this.
That's hilarious.
And I love telling this story because I have never stopped since. If I find a
Yeah.
movie with a scary title, if I thought it was a horror movie, I watched it, even if the movie was terrible, and 99% of them were. I watched
Oh
it,
yeah.
and I saw so
Yeah.
many bad movies.
Well, that's fantastic. And I mean, of course, there's no more terrible movie than Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I mean, you're watching
Loved
props
it.
falling over and whatnot, and you're like, this is fantastic.
No matter how bad the special effects, my imagination took over, and
Right?
there were aliens in that little paper plate flying through the air. There were aliens in my head.
Yeah.
It was all there. There were humans being tortured by mad alien scientists. They never even put that in the script of the movie, and my mind just put them there, and I believed it 100%. God, I love those days.
And I think that's the problem with childhood a lot of time, or revisiting things from our childhood lots of the times is that, things are, of course, so much different because our imagination is so much different. Back then, and it was so, back then it wasn't just an imagination, it was the reality that we created for ourselves in a way. It was so, I mean, that was kind of a lot of times, the reality that we understood. So it's kind of the reality that we, in a lot of ways, related to, and we held it really close to our hearts. So it's like, I mean, I can remember being, I don't know, maybe 9 years old, 10, no, it would have been about 10 or 11. I lived in an old country house, and for some reason, I was home alone, and we're neighbors are like half a mile up the street kind of thing. Big old country house. It's got all the creaks and groans that you would imagine from a country house. Very airy, so if it was windy, you'd hear that too. And I'm watching an American Werewolf in London for the first time, and it was years later before I had actually finished that movie because I ended up watching it right up. If you remember the scene where,
Let me guess.
oh, what the heck is
Let me
his
guess.
name?
Were they
Not David.
Nazi zombie werewolves with Uzis?
No, it was actually. I do remember that movie, but no, I remember from American Werewolf in London. It was the part where he's having the dream, like a fever dream. I think he's in the hospital. Yeah, I think he was still in the hospital. He hadn't been visited by his zombie David, his buddy David, ghost or whatever you want to call him, apparition. And it was the part where he's imagining himself turn into a zombie, and it's the exact moment where he's in the middle, I guess, down at the moors. He's in a bed, his hospital bed, and the camera zooms in as his eyes close, and his eyes snap open, and they're like red because he's or a vampire. He's a werewolf. And I remember just going, turned it off, went to bed, turned on the radio. That was it. Years later, I watched it. I'm thinking, I can't believe that was a pretty awesome movie. I mean, I hadn't even gotten to the transformation yet. So it was just hilarious that I would think as a child that was so bloody scary because, of course, kind of like you, imagination's going to overdrive. You imagine what's going to happen next. And it's like, no, not right now. It stuck with me
That
for
was right
years.
before the Nazi zombie werewolf scene because he was having a dream with a dream and he kept waking up and it kept getting worse.
Yeah,
I love that stuff. It went. We didn't think it was going to go there because no one did. Where did the Nazis come from? Why are these werewolves in Gestapo uniforms? And it just made no sense. And that's just why it was so great. It came out of nowhere. No explanation. Who needs one?
Exactly, right?
Gosh, I love that movie. I was 11. I think 1981 was werewolf year for movies. Yeah. The Howling, The Wolfen, which isn't technically a werewolf movie, but when I was 11, I didn't care. And we're American Werewolf in London. Those were so great. And I was like, we should have Werewolf Month every year. And it never happened again. That was like the end of werewolf movies.
It's been a while since they come up with werewolf movies. I mean, the last one that I can remember, they did Wolf with Jack Nicholson, which I thought, no offense if you loved it, but I thought it was just terrible. It was almost like the Wolfman meets Peter Pan. It's like all the leaping around that he was doing. It was just, I don't know, it looked laughable in not a good way because I think they were trying to make it serious, but it was just to me just seemed just kind of silly. And then they had a little bit after that was um, one with Del Toro and oh, what was that one? Just the Wolfman.
It's
It was
called
just
Wolf.
or Wolf, right? Yeah, just Wolf. That was a great movie. It was had a nice gothic feel to it, and from the old Talbot days, and that was a great movie. I thought that was very well done. They involved the gypsies
I
in it
like
and
them
everything
both.
else.
I like the Jack Nicholson one because it reminded me of my father.
Oh, okay.
Um, well, I mean, my dad's still alive, but he's retired now. But he was the fiction editor for the Atlantic Monthly,
Oh, no kidding.
and
Cool.
and so was Jack Nicholson's character was an editor. And there's a scene where someone's doing a hostile takeover and taking all of his clients away and firing him. And he runs around talking to all his authors, saying, "You work exclusively for me now. We'll get you a better contract. I want." And it was he survived the takeover and he did all this fancy office stuff. And I kind of like that. I was rooting for the editor because that's what my dad did.
100%. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. That's a good time to root for the editor.
It's the only time I mean, yeah, I like the movie just for that reason. Gosh, werewolves.
Yeah. No,
They're my
I can
favorite.
appreciate that.
I learned through Fangoria magazine about all the movies I couldn't find on television, including all the Paul Naschy Spanish werewolf films, which now you can find online if you really want to. There are
Yeah.
wonderful werewolf films. They're all made in the early 70s. Very gory. The Wolfman always had gobbets of flesh hanging off his fangs and blood soaked
As
into
he
his fur.
should.
And I found a couple that just blew my mind. There's one that started in a morgue, and they were about to perform an autopsy, a bunch of doctors on this werewolf victim. And then the victim reanimates and becomes a werewolf and kills all the doctors. And this is the first 5 minutes of the movie. And I'm like, I'm sold. This is the best movie ever made.
That's an interesting twist on it too, eh? That he's kind of like a zombie werewolf kind of.
Well, it's the mythology changes according to the scriptwriter. I mean, they didn't care. It's like we
It's a
want to do this
fantastical
scene.
creature anyway, so it's like there's I think origin is that's something you can put in quotations no matter what.
Well, some movies have. There's a series of films like Paul Naschy did all these werewolf films back to back, and some of them actually had a story that would go from movie to movie, which is frustrating because you can never find them and watch them in order. That's why I did the Hammer films chronologically, because when I'm a kid sneaking the TV in my room, I would watch Creature Double Feature, and there would be some Hammer Christopher Lee film, but it starts with the death of Dracula and how he becomes back. And I'm like, well, clearly this all happened in the movie before this. I want to see that now. I want to see them in order. I want to learn the whole story. That's how I got obsessed. Why would you start the film with the end of another movie if I can't see the other movie?
Yeah, that's
I'm
frustrating.
8 or 9 years old. I didn't understand.
Yeah.
We're not talking about many books tonight. It's all
That's funny. A Books of Horror. Let's talk about movies. It's a good thing you're not moderating this, right? You'd have to delete this.
Yeah, I would have to remove it. We're off topic.
We need a mod for the mod. Double mod. But yeah, no. If you want to talk about that, the one thing that blows me away and especially blows me away. And welcome, Don. I really appreciate you joining our little chat here. Hans and I started out saying that, or at least I said it. Maybe Hans is more, positivity than I do. That this is the first time that I've ever tried a live chat with my channel. So it's either going to be an incredible success and everybody be talking about it, or it'll be one big giant dumpster fire and everybody be talking about it. So it could go either way. So I appreciate you checking in and seeing what happens.
I just learned I was on private chat. Now I can see the comments.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I'm reading them. Hi, Don. Hi, Dark Bites. Or was that you, Rick?
Hello, that's me. That's me. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I always thought about that. If I should probably just put in dark bites into my thing here. But I thought, especially for this, I believe I usually post in books of horror as Rick Hipson, I believe. So I'm like, that's okay. I don't. I can be a split personality. That works. You know, be like Jekyll and Hyde. There you go. That ties into books of horror. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde. That was my first true love of horror, other than vampires. That was the first adult horror book that I read. I was like 9 years old, I believe, because I just moved out of Toronto shortly after. But no, it blows me away, Hans, that like the one thing I love about the books of horror is that there's next to no drama. I mean, 25,000 members, you're going to get crap and some trolls kind of passing through now and again, but the majority of it, I never see it. And I don't know how you guys do it. You know, 4 people. You once joked around that all you do is you sit around drinking tequila and you wait to tackle trolls. I find that believable.
The group runs itself. That's what's so great about it.
Yeah.
I see other groups and I see moderators that are the heavy-handed, and sometimes they like force themselves to post stuff that really shouldn't be. It's like they have to make material for the group, and you don't. You just need to sit back and let the members be the group, and all you have to do is look out for the robots selling T-shirts or people with the wrong attitude. They're out there and they're all over the internet, and we try to nip them in the bud right away. We don't want the drama. We don't want people arguing about political issues. We don't want people arguing about whether or not a book is horror or not. We just want you to talk about books.
Right.
And anything that's not that I can't remember if this was my idea or not. The admin all work so well together. I can't take credit for any one thing. We all do it. We all do the same way. We all think the same way. That if it's not strictly about a book of horror, no matter how interesting the subject, it's not for books of horror. You need to get rid of it. And it's some of the removals is difficult and painful. It's like, I really want to talk about werewolf movies with everyone, but not in this group, guys. I gotta remove this, and I'm sorry. Yeah. And that's tough. But sometimes, just every once in a while, a post is off topic, but it's enough people comment. There'd be like 100 comments, and the conversation's interesting enough. I'm like, okay, I'll just leave this one. I don't have to be such a hard ass all the time. Let's just let it go, and then another admin will remove it.
Yeah,
so
100%. Well, and it's cool too because I think I only got drawn into the, and I appreciate the. Thanks so much for that, by the way, Don. That's really awesome of you to say. So
thank you
very much. Glad to have you. And I do see here as well that I believe that Don has a question here too. So I just gotta finish up what I was about to mention there, Don, and we'll get to your question here. So thanks for that. Proof positive, like you were saying too, Hans, about regarding members that take care of themselves. I got drawn down to that rabbit hole once by some, we'll just call her a crazy lady and leave it at that. I don't think she was a troll. She never posted before. And we're just going on, and I made a comment on it, and then all of a sudden she starts trashing me and saying I was this bully and I was a womanizer and just all kinds of things. And I'm just like, I guess she caught me on the right day or the worst day, because remember that kind of stuff, and just like, all right, see you later. But I got drawn down into it, and it was just bad idea. And I was getting to the point where I thought I'm just going to like take a break from this whole social media thing for a while, because it was getting to me that much. And then talk about a member who, took care of things, none other than the immortal Ramsey Campbell actually came out to my rescue and said a couple of things regarding it. And I'm like, all right, Ramsey's got my back. I'm good. I'm good here now. And then other people jumped on, and then that was the end of it. And then I think an admin finally came in there and put a stop to the whole thread too. So it was really cool to see.
I love Ramsey Campbell so much. He is definitely one of my favorite members of the group, and definitely one of my favorite horror authors. But him as a man Ramsey Campbell has been a member almost as long as I have. He's always been around. And for an author of his status, I mean, he is one of the grandmasters, without question.
100%.
Ramsey Campbell wrote stories that cost me sleep and kept me cold. I couldn't go near a chimney or a fireplace because of his story, The Chimney. And I couldn't go on boat rides and carnivals because of The Companion.
That's awesome.
Because I would, the Companion's so creepy. So creepy. Probably his scariest story ever. And I read it when I was 9. And I complained about it. I complained
Such
to
a good
Ramsey
age.
in Books of Horror that these 2 stories terrified me so much that I lost sleep and I couldn't sleep with the fireplace. And Ramsey messaged back. He posted a comment saying, "So sorry about those cold nights."
That's awesome. That's awesome. Holy smokes.
It's just heart. I love you, Ramsey. He wishes me a happy birthday every year. He's such a gentleman.
How
And
cool
he
is that,
never
right?
gets mired in drama ever. He just says what he wants and he moves on. And he's always been a presence. He's one of my favorite Books of Horror members. Him and Jeff Strand is another. He's always been lurking.
Fantastic.
He chimes in when he wants, and he leaves it at that. He's great. There are a few others too that are like that have just been around forever and understood what the book group is about, and they do their thing. And then there's I think we just got Brian Keene added. I noticed you mentioned all 3 of those names. There's a lot of others.
Partner Mary San Giovanni, and there's just so many. Yeah, there's so many to name it. It's like
Anya Alborn. Okay, I could just keep trying to name them, but then there are some that come and go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they do come and go in that. I mean, Wesley Southard. I had a chance to read. I've got his Cruel Summer over here, and I read his newest one. We can. Oh, what the heck is? I'm going to screw up the title of it. It's around me somewhere, but I don't want to search for it. Yeah, he's a fantastic author as well. I believe Christopher Triana is in there. I've heard really good things about him. I haven't read him yet. Duncan Ralston. I haven't quite delved into the extreme horror stuff yet, but I understand that if I'm going to do that, he's probably the guy to try out. And and it's amazing, and I'm glad you mentioned a few of the other names as well, because I think that's the one thing that I love about the horror authors more than anybody else. I mean, I don't know that it's like this in any other genres. I'm pretty biased and one-sided as far as that goes. I just don't know, but I know that the guys that write some of the best horror out there, I mean, are some of the nicest people in the world, and they're so quick to put the spotlight on on you as well. I mean, I remember you mentioned Jeff Strand. I went into his one of his live chats that he did for a book launch, and I just happened to be in there, and it was around the time that maybe a month or so after I self-published a book of interviews and reviews and stuff myself. And I mean, this is Jeff Strand's game. He was there with a few other authors. It was a collaboration that they did.
Dracula's?
I think it might have been, yeah, because I think Dave Crouch was there as well. There was another Jeff.
Dracula's right there.
There you go. Yeah, Jeff Conrath. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that was the book.
And
it was
F.
his
Paul
book
Wilson.
launch. Okay. Yeah, thank you. F. Paul Wilson wasn't
that's-
there for some reason, but
I can't see it, but I have a complete Jeff Strand collection spanning. Oh, it keeps going. And
That
then
is
there's some
fantastic.
more up here.
Yeah, Jeff's a great dude. He was one of my he's the one that put a spotlight on Major in his own freaking show. Like, it was supposed to be to help market his book and the team of people that he wrote it with. And he's like, hey, by the way, this guy here, Rick Hipson, he's got a book. Rick, tell him about your book. And I'm like, but we're here to talk about your book. And then there was another author. There's Alex Norcross, I believe he's in the group as well. He's like, Alex, talk about your book. And he's just that kind of that kind of a guy. And I mean, he hooked me up. I think, yeah, his book Sinister Mr. Corpse was the first one I'd ever professionally reviewed for Rue Morgue. I don't know, way back when, and it's just the kindness of these guys is just incredible. I mean, I remember my first elbow rub, I guess, with in the early years with those guys was Jack Ketchum. I mean, he was at a point where it's didn't need to talk to some nobody like me, and this was way back when, especially, and yeah, he's just a fantastic dude, and gave me my first ever author interview.
He's awesome, Jack Ketchum. All right, so I grew up in Brookline High School. I mean, Brookline, Massachusetts. My brother and sister went to Brookline High, and Dallas Mayer taught English at Brookline High School back in the 1980s.
Shit. How cool is that? Okay.
While my brother and sister were students there, and at some point, and I think when I was 11, the first edition black cover paperback of Off Season fell into my hot little hands, and man, I was 11, and I'm reading about cannibals eating people in Maine, and this was the best book I've ever read in my life. Oh, it's so good. And then my brother took it away from me. So you're too young for this. No. So ever since then, every time I go to a bookstore, I make a beeline to used horror books looking for a copy of Off Season by Jack Ketchum. And it became a lifelong obsession. Even when I found copies, I continued to look. Now we're talking books, because Jack Ketchum is awesome. And Off Season, it's got to be one of my top 10 horror books of all time. He's so damn good.
Yeah, so that is really good too. And I know I haven't I've read the first two, of course, Off Season, Offspring. I haven't read The Woman yet. So, and then of course they've got a couple of movies out. So
there are 3 movies and 3 books. Pollyanna McIntyre. She plays the woman.
McIntyre. Yeah.
Or is it McIntosh? Or I think it's McIntyre. She wrote and directed a sequel to Woman. Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Called Little Darlin'.
Right. Yeah, Little Darlin'. Yeah. Yeah.
I love them. I love them all. A lot of other people I've heard say, I don't know, like the Lucky McKee material. I'm not a big fan of The Woman. Well, I loved it. I think The Woman was it's like another story in the world. It didn't have to follow Off Season or be the same story. It went in a different direction, and it showed that even though these cannibal people are bad, that modern day humans are 10 times worse. And I think a lot of people had escaped the people. They didn't really get that. And man, that guy was terrible. And there's a little novella called The Sow. I don't know if you've read that one.
No, I haven't. Is that Lucky McKee or?
It's Lucky McKee and Jack Ketchum, and it's the sequel to Woman. So spoiler: Woman survives Woman, and she goes off into the woods with a child, and they capture a hunter, and she wants to start a new family, and the hunter is her captive, and the woman does things to him that are horrifying, and it's like piercing him with bones in his genitals so he can produce children better. It's hard, again, horrific. Only the way Jack Ketchum can come up with this shit.
Right.
Well, okay, I could be wrong. I mean, there are a lot of writers who can come up with this shit, but he does it really well.
Yeah, he does it where it's so relatable, and it's like his words and his pacing is just a beautiful thing to behold. Believe it or not, too, I was chatting with Andrew Vandenhouten. So he produced those films and also produced the second ever film adaptation of Dallas Mayer, Jack Ketchum, The Girl Next Door. And he was telling me, I chatted with him again last week. It was a busy week last week. And he was saying that I guess they're coming up with a Blu-ray version of it, and that, which is kind of cool. But one thing that'll be very interesting is that he also that's going to be going out to onto Netflix, which I was extremely surprised that Netflix would would pick something like that up because they've had their share of controversy over the years
It's
of
such a brutal story. Would they really want that? Okay.
yeah, yeah, and you wonder, it's like, all right, so is it going to be under condition? Like that's one thing I didn't really get a chance to talk too much to Andrew about, so that would have been interesting to talk to. That's awesome. You're like, that's not a mug, that's a mug. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see what comes up with that, because that's one book, and it's one thing I want to chat with Andrew about. I'm actually hoping down the road, because I've done like just an embarrassing amount of coverage for that film when it first came out and talked to everybody, that I wanted to put a. I haven't really talked about this publicly because I didn't want to hold myself accountable for it, because it may or may not happen. But I wanted to actually make like a book of all the content that I have for that. But that's because I find that certainly in books of horror, that every now and again, maybe every few months or so, you'll see somebody that'll discover that book for the first time ever, and all of a sudden, you get hundreds of comments on it. It's still just as relevant, and it's just so polarizing. It's incredible.
There's some books that I don't think I'll have to read again, just because it's just too dark.
Yeah, that's
and
one
that's
of them,
definitely The Girl Next Door. Everyone
I
should read
watched
it
it
once.
twice, but I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just you have to read it. You have to read at least once, just to see the extent of what that man can do with words. Um, and I know he got a lot of slack over that. Talking about how it's exploitative and whatnot. But then at the same time, he also had a lot of people that came up to him afterwards and thanked him for that movie, apparently, because it was very cathartic. And they're like, I grew up as somebody that was abused as a child, and thank God this movie and this book is out there, that people are going to have those conversations and realize that as horrible as this is, the most horrible thing is the fact that it's the truth, and that these things happen behind closed doors. Maybe not as quite as horrible as this. They don't always lead in death, but it does still go on. And I mean, at least Ketchum's got the balls to write about it. Thank God Andrew Vandenhout and his company had the balls to make a movie about it. And yeah, it's such a prevalent thing.
I once
Yeah,
took a date to
definitely
see a
agreed on.
movie, and I chose Schindler's List. Okay, that's all I need to say on that.
Yeah. Did you at least buy dessert after? Did you get a chance
No,
to?
she was crying in a taxi and went home, saying I
Oh,
couldn't believe
geez.
all that happened. And I was like, well, it was a Spielberg film. I thought it would be a feel-good
Yeah.
movie. I took another date to see Crying in the Dark, and it was just as depressing. I don't know if you know that one.
Which one?
It's called Crying in the Dark. It's Lars von Trier film with Bjork.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
It's about a
Okay.
girl commits murder because she's losing her eyesight and saving money to give her son the operation to save his eyesight, and her money's stolen by, I think, like a landlord, and she murders him.
Oh,
Because
jeez.
she just wants, it's so sad and depressing, and I always pick the wrong movies.
Crying in the Dark. Okay, that's
Crying in the Dark, Lars von Trier. It never take a girl to a Lars von Trier film.
I'll keep that in mind. Mine doesn't do horror or any of that kind of stuff at all, so she's probably kind of safe, and I think she's stuck with me right now. So, yeah, and I appreciate the comments too, Don. Just reading over them here as well. So it's yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, when your favorite author passes away, you know what you're doing or whatever
So
at the particular time, so you hold on to things. Yeah, it's. I had the benefit because he passed away. It was in January, and I think I had my last conversation with him. It was an email interview in September, and I had no idea that he was that sick. I knew he had cancer, but I had no idea that Alice was quite that sick. And the fact that he was still doing interviews, and I mean, mine wasn't the last interview that he did. So I mean, even after the fact, he was still providing interviews and just being amazing to people and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
he did a bunch of cameos in films at the time, just before he died.
Yeah. I think all of his movies that adapted, he was in them. So that was pretty cool.
He was in an Ed Lee movie, the movie adaptation of Header.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't know this?
No, I didn't know that.
They made a really bad low budget version of Header. I don't know if you've read Header.
I have not. I haven't actually read. I've got a few of Edward Leeds books, but I haven't read them yet.
Ed Lee's over the top.
Yeah.
In brief, redneck family captures people, drills holes in their heads, and they have sex with it. That's what
Jesus.
a header is.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
the bodies are discarded, and one of the policemen that discovered the body and investigate was Jack Ketchum.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
You know,
That's
he's
cool.
one shot walk on scene. I think he was the bartender in Red.
Uh, he was the bartender in The Lost.
The Lost. That's it.
Yeah, The Lost. Yeah, because the cop, I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, he comes in and talks to him, and he just finished meeting with the drunk woman who was played to perfection by D. Wallace Stone. And the cop afterwards, yeah, he goes into the bar and has a shot with Alice. Yeah, yeah. And the girl next door, he was a carnival barker. I think he worked at the Ferris wheel.
Nice.
And Red, I can't remember.
Maybe he wasn't in Red. I thought it was Red. He was the bartender in.
No, I think he was in Red too. I think he might have been the guy. And sorry, guys, spoiler alert. Who delivers the box of puppies at the end of the movie? I could be wrong about that, but or the box of puppy rather, it's just the one puppy. I think.
Well, you just ruined the ending of John Wick.
There we go. Kills the dog, right? So
John Wick is just Red on meth.
Basically, yeah, yeah, just a far more pissed off version of it. And it's interesting too because Lucky McKee was the guy who was supposed to. He was originally supposed to direct Red, but not Red, but actually it might have been the Red. I was going to say the Lost. Yeah, it was the Lost, but somehow that didn't work out, I guess. And then Chris Severson, who also did I Know Who Killed Me, which I thought was a cool movie, but it just got trashed. And it just, I mean, what's your name there? Who was it that was in that one? Logan, or I can't remember what her name is now. Her, she's notorious for doing terrible movies, but she was in it. And yeah, he ended up directing the movie The Lost, which I thought was a pretty cool movie. I enjoyed that one.
I really like Lucky McKee's films too, like May.
May was fantastic, right?
And he did an awesome episode of Masters of Horror, Mick Garris's show from Showtime. I don't know if you saw any of those.
I've seen a few of them. I'm just trying to remember which one he did.
He did one with that actress from May.
Oh yeah, Misty Monday or Aaron Brown.
Nope. I think her name's Bettis.
Oh yeah. Yeah, her.
She also played Carrie in one of the television Carrie remake. I love this actress, and I can't believe I can't remember her name right now.
I know Bettis. I'm gonna find her first. And yeah, and she was also in. I'm not sure if it was Lucky McKee when it was called Bug.
She's in The Woman. She plays the wife in Woman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she is so underrated. I find like she's just brilliant.
She plays a girl called Sick Girl, who is a mousy.
Sick Girl, that's the one. Yeah.
Like she stays at home. She loves insects, and she has an affair with a woman who's an insectologist. I whatever the term is, but she becomes invaded by an insect species that takes over her body, and she eats people. She's a sick girl.
That was a great movie. Let's see here. What is her name?
Angela Bettis, I think.
Sorry, I'm just going. I think you're right. Yeah, you beat me to it. I was trying to chase down IMDb, which I go for all of my movie trivia.
Same here. Love IMDb.
Here's something that I think you might find pretty interesting, and something I absolutely have not talked about publicly. Because I was thinking, speaking of IMDb, so if you remember back in the day when they used to have like the forum and you can comment on it.
Yes.
I actually ended up having a pretty good friend out of that from the thread on Jack Hatcher movie. Guy on there, and, great dude. Of all this. So I live.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, but I didn't get that last question.
media that claim of from sorry. Um, so I'm coming across a woman who claimed to be the real daughter or one of the real daughters of the psycho woman. And honestly, even if I can remember her name, I'm not sure I even want to say her name again. If you remember, what inspired Jack Hutchins, The Girl Next Door, was the Sylvia Likens story from Indiana from back in, I think, 68, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And what really happened with the woman and the that was the the prime lady, the primeval psycho bitch uh, that had these kids that basically did this so-called neighborhood gang and had some friends over and had her daughters and her daughter boyfriend play a part in the torture and eventual death of Sylvia Likens. And this lady claimed to be the daughter of this person. So yeah, or, whatever, some kind of sick troll or something. So long story short, I ended up figuring out that it actually was her. And I ended up setting up a conversation with her that I had because I was covering the film adaptation at the time, and I got in touch with the producer Andrew Van Houten, and him and I actually he basically just kind of sat in on the conversation and listened to it, and that was back in the day where my high tech abilities for doing interviews was to basically put somebody on speakerphone. I had a little micro cassette recorder. I'd hit record and I'd put it beside the phone. So we did that and actually chatted with this person. And I remember he talked about doing a special regarding this interview and maybe putting it on some kind of television program or something. But I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't want to go there. And not to mention, I mean, I don't think this lady deserves a spotlight. And I think she really had nothing of value to kind of add to the world. Anyways, but yeah, I'll never forget that as well. That was very disturbing. The whole conversation was very awkward and very disturbing, and
I would imagine. Yeah.
not something I'd want to repeat. So I think she wasn't stable. I think she was. I remember her talking about all these medications she was on. I'm sure it was only half of the ones that she was probably on at the time, and would go off on like these just delusional tangents where I was constantly having to bring her back to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to ask you these point blank questions that are going to be horrible questions for you to want to even think about, let alone answer. And of course, she dodged them all and just kind of went all over the place. And yeah, it was pretty creepy. So, but yeah, that's something I never revisit. I've still got the recordings of it, and I thought maybe I'd go back to them at some point and listen to them again and see if I can pull something out of it. But I'm like, nah, I just kind of leave that over there where it is.
I mean, maybe transcribe it all. It just reminded me of I had a friend. I still have a friend. His name's Mike Diana, and he did mini comics. Okay. He was a big fan of horror comics, undergrounds, and ECs, and he would write and draw his own mini comics, and he just loved the horror. The gorier, the better. The any taboo he would zero in on. He wanted to be obscene as much as possible. He loved it, and I loved him for it because his artwork generally showed that he loved this stuff, and he would draw like he could draw in a very simple like Richie Rich style.
Okay.
So maybe you could imagine like Casper the Friendly Ghost killing Richie Rich and fornicating with his head stump and planting a garden of limbs. And I can't even describe how dark his stuff was. But he published a fanzine, I think 9 issues of it, called Boiled Angel. And he would publish the mini comics Boiled Angel. It was like half. I know I have a copy somewhere. But it was the standard format for a chapbook. Okay. And he drew the cover and he would draw comics and illustrations. And then he invited his friends and pen pals. Well, his pen pals were convicted serial killers in prison.
Oh, Jesus.
He literally wrote fan letters to like Otis Toole, who was Henry Lee Lucas's traveling buddy, who killed Adam Walsh, America's Most Wanted. Adam Walsh, his son was the one that was disappeared. It was killed by Otis, and Otis confessed to cooking and eating him.
Oh, Jesus.
My friend Mike Diana wrote to him and got his barbecue sauce recipe and published
I
it.
hope he doesn't have all the ingredients.
Yeah. Well,
Jesus.
it's going to get worse. He wrote to a lot of convicted killers and collected material and would publish it in his fanzine. And one of them was fiction by another serial killer who wrote these graphic murder stories that turned out to be the real life details of actual murders he committed and had not been caught for. And the FBI found out about it, and they wanted to, they didn't know if it was the killer in jail writing it or if Mike Diana had committed these murders. So they ordered his mini comics out of state. In other words, he was in Largo, Florida, and they ordered it from like Maryland, and he sent it to them, making it an out of state and a federal crime. And they busted him for distributing obscenity, and they raided his home, and they investigated him for the murders. And this guy's like a year older than me, but this was back in 94, so he was like 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And really a nice, peaceful, quiet kid who just had a dark imagination and loved to draw this stuff. Anyway, the FBI busted him, and the Florida judge fined him and put him under house arrest, and was told they could bust into his house and make sure he wasn't drawing that stuff 24/7 without warning. So there were comic book journals. There was a magazine called the Comic Book Journal that would be the champion of any comic book artist, no matter how big or small. And they made this a full-page article, a cover article for their magazine, and became a big name. Mike Diana. Everyone wanted Mike Diana comics. I think he's great. He was like, I don't know if you know what Art Brut is, or he's sort of like a folk artist, comic book artist.
Okay.
He didn't have formal training. He just copied what he liked. He drew the way he liked to, and he did these wonderful horror stories. And I thought they were great. And even if the artwork wasn't perfect, but I think he got better and better. You can look him up now, and you'll see all sorts of nasty drawings. Gosh, I love Mike Diana stuff. I wish I could put some on the screen right now and show you, but you might get shut down by the feds.
Yeah, I know.
He has since moved to New York City, and he's had art exhibitions in galleries. And there's a movie documenting all this, directed by Frank Henenlotter.
No shit. Okay.
Now, but some of you don't know who Frank Henenlotter is, but he directed Basket Case.
Yeah,
Frankenhooker.
Love that movie. Exactly. Yeah. Street Trash and
Street Trash. I'm not sure he did Street Trash.
Did he
might have to look that one up. I don't think he did Street Trash.
Okay.
He did a movie called Brain Damage.
Yeah.
About a little worm named Elmer that would inject you with psilocybin as long as you provided him with people's brains to eat. And he did 3 Basket Case films.
Yeah, I only saw the
Street
first one.
Trash. It's the same time era, but that's not a Henenlotter.
Oh, guys, yeah, I always keep getting confused.
They're drinking this old booze that was stored in the basement, and there's some kind of mold growing on, and you drink it, you melt and explode. And there's some
back in the slime
homeless
area.
guys that play hot potato with someone's penis. I really love that movie. In addition to books of horror, I run a couple of movie groups.
Okay.
I actually admin like, I don't know, maybe 15 different Facebook groups.
Holy shit. And you work for a living too. Holy smokes.
I have a full-time job. In case you're wondering, I bartend and wait tables.
Oh, okay, cool.
That pays
I
the
could
rent.
see you. Yeah. Keeps you the right environment for the for all this crazy admin stuff.
Yeah, I spend my nights adminning, and in the morning before work, I check my emails. And anyway, one of the groups is a bad movie club that I've been involved
Okay,
with longer than Books of Horror, and we watch movies together online almost every day.
cool,
In fact, tonight at 11, I'm hosting Critters 3.
nice.
I think that's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio. Anyway, we love bad movies, and we've done all the Frank Henenlotter films, and we love street trash more than anything
Yeah,
because
great
it's
movie.
so
And,
awful and fun.
well, that's what I liked regarding those kind of films and that I find like, and I've always liked them too. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Return of the Living Dead because it's just so it's gruesome, it's gory, it's fun, it's funny, and it's just so over the top ridiculous that like how can you not just laugh your guts off? I mean, have you seen one of the movies I saw late last year? I guess it would have been. It's called Fried Berry. It just came out 4 months ago, maybe on Shutter.
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a guy named Ryan Kruger, so that was his first feature film. He's actually doing a remake of, oh man, what was it? Fright Night. Yeah, he's doing a remake of Fright Night, reimagined of that
Didn't,
movie.
hold on, another remake because they made one already that sucked.
Yeah, he's doing another one. So hopefully this one doesn't suck. But if you see, you
You
can
sure it's
watch
not
his.
Lost Boys?
Yeah, no, it's not Lost Boys. You can go onto YouTube right now. Actually, if you type in "fried berry short," you can watch like the original 3 minute. I think it's like 3 minutes or something of it. And basically, what you're doing is you're watching a guy having a completely overdosing, and it's fantastic. And then imagine that as a feature length film. And I guess he's a South African filmmaker, and he's I guess fairly popular in that area for his movie or music videos. And you can definitely tell that like a lot of his the choppiness and the sequences, the way he connects everything. There's a definite beat that goes on in all of his scene selections and kind of the way he transitions from one scene to the next. You can that definitely comes across quite a bit. It's just such a great over the top movie, and some of the stuff you've been talking about, I'm like, yeah, this is totally up your alley. I would check that out. And it's like
Fried Berry.
yeah, definitely
I'm
highly
putting them on the
recommend that
list.
one. It's awesome. So, and one that just came out recently, Glorious. I'm hoping that I could chat with the people from that. Actually, you mentioned Fangoria earlier. Rebecca McKendry. She's the writer director. Well, she wrote that one with her. Or no, sorry, she's the director. Her husband is actually the writer of that film, and it stars Ryan Quanten. So he played. I don't know if you ever watched the TV show True Blood. He played Jason Stackhouse in that film. And it's kind of like if you picture the movie 1408, and then instead of John Cusack hunting down ghosts, you basically have Jason Stackhouse stuck in the most grungiest truck stop bathroom you can think of. And it's based on H.P. Lovecraft film. And in the stall next door, you've got Gat, who's a demigod. And he has to get a sacrifice, and he basically needs the guy's name is Wes, so he needs Wes to help sacrifice a part of himself. And they're having this conversation through a glory hole in the between the stalls, and all you
Ew.
hear is the voice. It's S.K. Simmons or J.K. Simmons rather. He's the voice of the demigod,
He's
and they're
so
trying
good.
to do they're trying to do all of this before Gat's dad shows up to basically fuck shit up, and he's going to create an absolute total annihilation for the entire universe, unless he gets West to help him out and save the known universe. And it's such a good movie. It's so over the top and it's funny. It's good.
I need to
And
start
it's
making a list. I had no idea I would. This
yeah,
is
that would
great
just
timing. I just finished binging a bunch of Netflix shows.
okay. Do
I'm all
you have
caught up.
Shutter?
One of my other movie hosts does have Shutter.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
it's on Shutter. It just went there a couple of days ago.
I love the Creep show on
Yeah, I
Shutter
haven't
very
seen that,
much.
but I heard it's hit and miss. But I've heard when it hits full throttle. I heard it's
You
really pretty
gotta
good.
watch the first episode of the first season, which adapts two stories. The first one is one of my favorite Stephen King stories, Gray Matter,
Okay.
and I don't know if you know, that's a story in Night Shift about bad beer. Man, the story is told from a
So
boy.
I know I've read the
You're
book, but I don't
sold.
remember the story.
Well, it's not everyone's favorite story in the book because it's not an obvious horror story. It's very subtle until the last few pages. But
Yeah.
they take it literally. The beer is turning this kid's dad into an amoeba, a giant amoeba, and there's kids missing and pets are missing, and the kid keeps coming to the store to pick up a case of beer to bring to his dad, who won't leave the house and has the windows shuttered and is living off of like welfare checks now. He can't work.
Yeah.
And his dad is just sitting there in the chair. He never gets up and is growing. So the story in the episode of Creep Show is told through the point of view of the kid and the people at the store, which are all Stephen King film veterans.
Yeah.
One of them is Giancarlo Esposito, and I'll give you $10 if you can name the Stephen King movie he was in. This is great trivia.
Carlo Esposito.
Do you know who Giancarlo Esposito is?
You know, I know the name, but I just can't. I'm trying to picture the face.
He's a big name now.
Okay,
He was one of the heavy villains in Breaking Bad. He's the guy who ran the chicken franchise. And he is one of the bad guys in the first season of The Mandalorian.
Okay,
You're a Star Wars fan? Anyway, he played a punk kid in Maximum Overdrive.
No kidding. Okay.
In the arcade, when the machines take over in the arcade, he's playing video games when the video games kill him.
That's cool. Wow.
And Adrian Barbeau.
Such a good movie. Such a good bad movie.
It is one of my favorite bad movies, Maximum Overdrive.
100%, yeah.
I have it somewhere. I have a Maximum Overdrive baseball cap from the movie production. Unfortunately, It's red. And okay, I won't tell that story. We'll skip the red hat story. Right. But Adrian Barbeau, anyway, and there's some other. The kids, the twins from The Shining, are the missing kids in Gray Matter.
Okay.
So, all right. So Stephen King always hated the Kubrick Shining.
Yeah.
And the twins are a Kubrick Shining element that everyone remembers. That you get Jack Nicholson with the axe in the book. It's a hammer. It's a croquet hammer or something like that.
Yeah.
And there are no twins. The Grady twins aren't in the book. The Gradys all die, but there weren't twin girls in blue dresses. That's just a creepy visual element that Kubrick put in. So King murdered them in this. They murdered them on behalf of King.
That's fantastic.
And you get to
murder
see their
somebody
bodies.
else's bad idea on his story.
Yeah, that story is also memorable. If you read it, there's a very, very early. If I say this, don't take it the wrong way, but it could be Pennywise prototype.
Okay.
Because they tell a story of a sewage worker who goes in the sewage. This is it's not dairy, because dairy hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah. By
King, if he invented it, is it a real town?
No, it's Kingstown, I believe.
He goes down the base into the sewer system under the town and finds kittens and puppies in a spider web, and the spider's so big it turned his hair white.
Who does that mean? Yeah, who does that sound like?
That sounds to me like Pennywise's alien incarnation as a spider to me.
Yeah, and I mean it's very interesting too that a lot of King's world is very interconnected as well that I had no idea previous. And I know we talked about this before regarding the Gwendy trilogy that he co-wrote with, or at least two of the books he co-wrote. That shouldn't be a hard word to say. Co-wrote with Richard Chismar. And I know, of course, with Gwendy's Final Task, and remind me afterwards too. I need to get that out to you. So the arc that I had of that, because you've got the other two arcs, I believe.
I need the arc for Gwendy's Final Task. That's the one I'm looking for. I have the other two. Thank you. I didn't know you knew that.
Yeah.
Someone's paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
I have over 100 Stephen King arcs and proofs, and that's one of the few I don't have. You can probably see some of them
Yeah, right here. I
Here
don't
is
believe
the
it's this one.
that's the arc for Under the Dome.
Okay, very nice.
Man,
Arcs are the best.
I've been, this is a great topic for me. Here's the UK Under the Dome arc. I've got them both.
Nice,
So
still in
that's what I try to
cellophane.
do. I have them all
Okay,
in plastic. I don't want them to get dinged or dirty. They are worth a
right.
small fortune.
Yeah.
So
Well,
one of the perks of
here's this one. What's that? Sorry.
I was about to go into a big thing, but you just distracted me with that beautiful book in your hand.
Sorry. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's still in. I'd still call it in excellent condition. I mean, I read it
Oh,
once. I put it on my shelf.
I
So,
covet
have you
that
read
book.
this one?
I read only the first of the three.
Oh, okay.
I have a
Yeah,
reading
it's
pile.
pretty nice.
It's so big.
It is. Yeah, it's about the size of the first two. So I've got this one here as well. This is. I think this one is signed by Rich. No, it isn't. This one came out of his office, I think.
So
So that's the second one.
right, but that's not the arc. I don't think.
No, this one's not the arc. No, this one I bought on Amazon. The very first one, Gwendy's Magic Box, that one, Rich sent that one to me as a PDF. And then he just sent that one there to me when I asked for that one to review it and chatted with him.
Nice.
So, but no, that's gorgeous. And it's, of course, it's got, when you mentioned Pennywise in there, of course, Rich takes them back to Dairy Lane. And there's a big tie-in for the Dark Tower series in here as well. So that ends up getting expanded on.
Nice. I love Stephen King so much. I've always been a lifelong fan, and I can talk about that for a sec if you want. I don't know how much time you have. I got plenty of time.
Yeah, I think we're okay. My girlfriend just messaged me a bit ago. I guess their swimming got canceled because of thunder, which is silly. I mean, it's not like lightning bolts are coming out of the sky. I mean, I guess that would be the next possible step, but still. So, but yeah, they're out of the house for a little bit, so I think we're still okay.
So I have an older brother who passed away in 2013. But I remember back in 79, and I was 9 years old at my brother's birthday party. I think he would be 16. And he had gotten a stack of Stephen King paperback books for his birthday. And there weren't many back then. In 79, there were only a handful. He got The Shining and Salem's Lot and Night Shift. Yeah. He was super excited. And that affected me. A 9-year-old Hans was like really excited too. Oh, let me see. So what my brother did from that point on is he brought a pencil with him when he read the short stories in Night Shift, and then he circled all the best parts. So this is how I first read Stephen King. I read the death scenes in The Mangler first. I didn't read the whole story, just the really good gory parts.
Just the highlight reel.
And I think what my brother's plan was to terrify me and make me lose sleep, and it totally backfired because I just wanted more and more and more. Give it to me. So when he then went and read a bunch of James Herbert books and circled all the gory parts in The Rats and had me read them, and The Fog and the gore. I didn't have the patience to read a whole book at 9, but if you said this is a really good part and handed it to me, I would be gone for 15 minutes just watching about somebody eaten alive by rats.
That's great.
And like my brother loved watching me do that. And all his early horror books that I read, I usually just read the best parts first until I had the patience to read a full-length story.
Yeah,
I don't know how that twisted me.
Well, for the better, apparently, because here you are now, and it's obviously worked out pretty well. So it's so cool, right? I mean, I think if you get most horror aficionados or just big fans of horror, they can usually tie it back to a couple of pretty prominent spots in their childhood. Like I know I mentioned before, but like I've always been absorbed by vampires. I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde Stephen said, I mean, when I was about 9, and I just fascinated me. And of course, I cheered for the monster, and I was so sad at the end of the book because I just didn't understand him. And then I remember a few years later, I ended up, I would have been about 12 years old. And I'll never forget it. I found on my cousin's book, or my cousin's floor in his room. I was over for Christmas or something one year. And I saw, what book, but one, I don't remember which portion of it or which edition it was, but it was Clive Barker's Books of Blood. So I'm like, I wonder what this is. This sounds kind of cool. It's got blood in the title. Cool. Maybe it's about vampires. So I picked it up and I read it, and I was just hooked, 100% hooked, all in on the horror stuff at that point.
Oh man, I remember getting Books of Blood. Those are so good. That blew my mind.
Just gorgeous books.
I got the British paperbacks, and
okay.
I remember reading Dread. I think that was my favorite story because I imagined being locked in a cell and having to eat rotten meat to get out.
Yeah.
Spoiler. And I think that was Evil Clown before it. Clive Barker wrote Evil Clown before Stephen King.
Nice. Yeah, that was they were so good. They I know they were going through and doing this whole series of the movies at one point. I know they did a movie of Dread. I haven't seen it myself yet. They're doing that through Paraffin Films. Oh, was it good?
Well, my 16-year-old memory of the story was better.
Right.
But I'm not sure if that's a fair way to gauge the success of the film. But you don't see it anywhere anymore. So I think it was bad.
Yeah, well, I know around that time, they were releasing a bunch of the movies from the studio that ran them. I think it might have been Seraphim Films. I'm not sure. No, it was one of the film companies that was putting them out. And I know they put out like the Midnight Meat Train as well. And there was a change of guard, I guess, where they got a new president. And the president that came in. I can't remember what his name is now. I wrote an article about it a long time ago when it happened. And he was basically had a major grudge and was very pissed off and a huge amount of animosity to the old guard. But because I guess it was part of their deal where any of the movies that were made that just hadn't quite been released yet or been distributed yet, the old guy would get a certain percentage of them. So to basically make sure that he got as little money of that as possible, they purposely put them either straight to DVD or extremely limited movie theaters. So this guy would get as little revenue as possible from that. Because I remember watching... I guess in a sense, from a selfish standpoint, it was kind of cool because I went and saw to my knowledge anyways, the only theater in all of Canada. I'm in Ontario, Canada, in Kitchener. And in all of Canada, I saw Midnight Meat Train on a Halloween at like 10 o'clock showing. And I showed up there and I guess me and about 5 or 6 other people that were in the theaters were the only people in Canada that saw this on the big screen. But I got the movie poster after. Yeah, and it's funny because the woman that introduced me, she's now a friend of mine. Shout out to Susan Knox. She introduced me to the Books of Horror, and I remember I lent her that movie because I had the Blu-ray version of it, and she saw it. She didn't like it very much for different reasons. I guess just the way that it kind of tied into the book. But it's like the book's the books, the movie's the movie. But I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
I wanted to answer Dawn's question. Since she's the only one asking any, did you ever watch Tales of the Unexpected in the 70s? We had that in the UK too. Absolutely. I was always looking for horror shows on TV, and there weren't any. And Tales of the Unexpected was one of my favorites. I would love to watch them over again now, but I don't remember a single episode. I hope that answers your question. But I loved it. I also liked Tales from the Dark Side, which was Romero, and then there wasn't much else. Night Gallery, and I remember a show called Thriller or Cliffhanger.
Yeah,
that might be before your time, Rick. I don't know how old you are.
I'm 46.
Okay, I got you by 6 years.
Okay. Yeah, Tales from the Dark Side. I know I saw them and really enjoyed them. It's funny, I almost wore the T-shirt today, but I don't remember the episodes very well.
There's one particular one that Tom Savini directed, and it's when Tom Savini's heyday before CGI took him out of the picture. And I hate to say it, but CGI killed practical effects for quite some time, and I know they're coming back. But it's like the best way to do it is the combination of both, not to rely on one or the other. But
like what they did with Stranger Things, it was a mixture of the two, which worked out really well.
Love Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I mean, Walking Dead might be a great example of a mixture of practical and special effects with CGI.
100% agreed. Yeah.
They just they have limbs for every occasion now.
Yeah.
But Tom Savini directed this, and he made a fully working model of a little monster, though with animatronic limbs, and it was creepy. And that's all I remember. It looked like a fur, an albino monkey without any fur, and long fangs and claws.
Yeah.
It's worth looking up.
Okay.
It was very creepy. I might have to go watch that again tonight.
I know you're making my homework cut out for me here. I appreciate it.
No worries. I never finished my Stephen King story. I want to get back to that. After my brother introduced me to Stephen King, and I read all the short stories in Night Shift, my dad wanted me to read more, and he knew that I was a big Stephen King fan, as well as my brother. And he worked in publishing. So whenever a new King book was about to come out, my brother or I would get the advanced uncorrected proof months before the first edition, starting with, I think, like Firestarter or Cujo.
Okay, yeah.
Without fail. It was always a big day. But Dad could come home, and my brother and I would be sitting there, and he would reach into his briefcase and put the new Stephen King arc on the mantle above the fireplace, and then declare who got to read it first.
That's awesome.
I got It and Misery, and my brother was so mad. And he would get, what else did he get? He got Eyes of the Dragon. I got Different Seasons. I think that might have been one of the earliest ones.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one. Skeleton Key, are you thinking of?
What?
Skeleton Key?
Skeleton Key was later.
Okay.
Let's see. We didn't get the Skeleton Key arc. I got the Bachman books.
Okay. So it would have been, I guess, with Firestarter and
with Firestarter and Cujo, and I gotta remember what else, because I ended up filling the gaps by buying them later on.
Yeah,
like I later found I have a Carrie arc.
Okay.
I have Christine. I've got The Stand. There's some big ones. Dance Macabre. That was the hardest one to find. Dance Macabre, because it was
really enjoyed that one.
Different publisher than Viking or Doubleday. So my dad couldn't get it, so I had to find it somewhere else. So that's why I have all these arcs. When my brother passed away, and I added his collection to mine, and I had doubles of all these Stephen King books, and all the arcs together on one shelf. And I was like, well, I think my brother would want me to complete this collection. Yeah. So I've been buying them wherever I could find them, or get them anywhere I can. Some people gave them to me. Some people would charge me an arm and a leg, but I was very determined to get them all. There was also a time Stephen King sent my dad a story for the Atlantic Monthly. And my dad rejected it. He rejected the story. Oh, yeah, he did. He rejected the story, which later was published in Red Book magazine, but he gave me the manuscript to read. And it was Mrs. Todd's Shortcut, which is in Skeleton.
And was it good, or was it just why
it's one of his best stories. I love this story. It's about a woman who drives through Castle Rock every day, determined to find the best shortcut through side roads. And what happens is she finds an impossible shortcut. In other words, they time the difference between where she leaves and where she arrives. And even if you were a bird flying directly, you could not make the time that she's making. So there's some supernatural aspect to
Some
her.
phenomenous going on there, yeah.
Yeah, this is Todd Shortcut. So it's
Yeah,
a
I know what you
very
mean, Don. Sorry, Don was just talking about the Hammer House of Horrors as well. I mean, that was such good stuff with Vincent Price.
Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe films for Roger Corman.
Yeah,
I love those the most. I love a lot of that Vincent Price stuff and Peter Lorre and Boris Karloff.
yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch. I don't know if you remember this. And Rue Morgan actually did a nice spread of it a little while back. A show called The Hilarious House of Frankenstein. And I believe Vincent Price was in a couple of those episodes as well.
I got to look that up.
Well, you've never seen them. Maybe it's a Canadian thing. I think it might be a Canadian thing.
I wanted to do all the Frankenstein movies in my horror movie club. Did I mention I have a horror movie club too?
You mentioned you've got about 15 of them.
Well, there's...
Well, in general, not specifically for the movies.
I admin the Richard Corbin fans group. I admin the Jeff Strand fans group. The Josh Mallerman fans group. Cool. I help admin 3 Stephen King collectors groups. I have the Levidian Publications fan group. I opened that one. That's my creation.
Okay. Cool.
And I just help admin a lot of others. Literally, I just look for notifications and I check and make sure everyone's behaving. It's nothing.
You take a shot of tequila for everybody that says something bad. Very nice. Now, I have to ask you this then. So for all the ones that you admin, has there ever been another group of folks or another Facebook group like the Books of Horror that's been almost 100% responsible for essentially launching the success of an author's career?
Okay, that's a good question.
Because you know who I'm thinking of and talking about, right?
There's a bunch of books that become so popular on Books of Horror that they really help the author sell copies. And one of them I think might be Stolen Tongues.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, Felix Blackmore.
Yeah, good for him. I haven't read it.
Right?
I want to read it.
I think we might be the only 2 people that haven't read it yet. On my list.
I don't even have a copy yet, but I do have a stack of books that I have just because Books of Horror keeps mentioning it, and I just and I want to get through them.
Felix has some cool stuff on YouTube as well, with him narrating some of his short stories, as well as other people narrating the short stories, and they're fantastic. I mean, they're just beautiful little stories that he writes, and I'm thinking if Stolen Tongues is an elongated version of that I'm sure it'll be a fantastic book. I think he's kind of in that you're basically there's 2 sorts of people in Books of Horror. There's those that have read it and those that are going to read it. I think it's kind of like split right down the middle.
I got to figure out some way that I can tap in on this, and because I mean one of my other admins is selling retail like T-shirts and hoodies, and I bought the hoodie. I couldn't resist it. I want to wear it at conventions.
Very cool. Well, I bought a T-shirt, but it was actually for my friend because she's awesome. I think I ended up meeting her because I was selling a John Skip book, The Long Last Call, and she bought it. And we got talking about horror, and she mentioned this group, and we've been friends since. And long story short, my computer died, so she went and gave me her freaking computer. So I've been getting a collection of books and things together, including I bought a shirt from Books of Horror to throw into the mix of it as well. So Don
Keat just mentioned another one, Winterset Hollow.
Yeah, that's one that's been making the rounds. I've been seeing.
I have a copy signed by the author. Subscribe to me. And then I haven't read that one yet either. It's on my shelf. I'm looking at it right now. Someone got that for me, and I didn't know what it was when he got it. Huh. And then I went to my own group, and I just kept seeing it over and over again. I'm like, oh my God, I got one of the books my own group is pushing, and I didn't know what it was.
That's awesome. I guess that goes to show you, that's one of the things I was talking about with Another author who I think has done pretty well for the Books of Horror group and ones like them is Eric LaRocca. So I was
Yeah.
chatting with him about what makes a book viral kind of thing. And I guess that what makes it viral is you got the book, you've heard about the book, even though you haven't really read the book or don't know anything really about the book. And he was one of those guys too. I've only read one of his books recently, his We Can Never Leave This Place, which was incredible. And then I bought this one recently. Where is it here? Since it's right behind me. You've Lost. I'm going to switch it over to my solo screen here, my other camera. I'm going to call it my other camera so I sound like I'm in an elaborate studio. Same camera, different view. So this one here is kind of a blur on it. So this one apparently just went into, I think he said he self-published this one, which I didn't realize at the time. And good for him. Yeah, I think he said he sold just over 10,000 copies recently, which is pretty awesome for a self-published anything.
Yeah, I gotta tap into this. I gotta do
Right.
something because, man, I'm gonna do chapbooks and sell them in the Books of Horror group. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, and
Maybe
I think
find
there's a resurgence of those. I mean, all these
Big time.
novellas like this, the one that I showed you, and a lot. I mean, Books of Ton, even. I mean, or Stolen Tons, read Books of Ton. That sounds like a different kind of book. But yeah, Stolen Tons. It's not a very big book either. I don't know if you would classify that as a novella or just a short novel, but I've been finding that there's been a lot bigger of a market for that kind of stuff. I always call it the TikTok attention span, but I kind of like it too, though. It's almost like that in between stage, I guess, between a quick one night stand or a long term relationship. It's sort of the rebound, I guess, or what you do in between, I suppose. Like these just perfect lengths of these books where you don't get too invested enough that it's a great sit down. It's a great enjoyable ride, and you're left wanting more. And I find that for those lucky enough as well, they're pretty good. They make really good film adaptations as well. You don't really have to take too much out of a full novel to squish it into a 90-minute, 2-hour long movie. So.
A lot of writers have said this about the novellas, the perfect format for horror.
I agree. I think it is.
And I love collecting and reading them. It's that fungus again.
Yeah.
Novellas just keep growing. It's like just enough time to get to know the characters before you kill them. That's the way I think about it.
Exactly. That's a good point, actually. That's a really good point.
That you will actually worry about them and miss them.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, at least you don't get too invested in it. It's just part of the ride, and it's fun. And
I want to mention one of my favorite new authors.
Yeah,
we haven't mentioned him yet, and Books of Horror hasn't really affected him that much, simply because most of his books have been limited editions and sold out. But his name is Philip Fracassi, and he had a book out from Earthling publication called Boys in the Valley. That was his first published novel, and it takes place in like 1703, or maybe it's very early colonial America. And it's about an orphanage in the valley, the boys in the valley. It's an all boys orphanage, and you get to meet all these kids and their bitter, no frills lifestyle in an orphanage where they're barely given enough food to eat and they have to work all day, and then they're still treated like shit by the priests and the men who work there who aren't priests, and it's just this miserable life, and you just, for lack of a better word, you fall in love with these kids, and then it turns into The Exorcist meets Evil Dead.
Oh jeez. Plot twist.
There's a knock at the door, and in walks horror, and it doesn't stop from that point on. And I was just blown away. It was cinematic. It's about to come out in mass market, I think, early 2023.
Okay.
But I think if I spoil it a little now, you might forget what I say. I'm not going to spoil it too much. But there's a man possessed by a demon brought in, and they bring him to the priest to try to exorcise it, and they get the demon out of the body, and the body dies, but the demon finds a kid in the orphanage, and from there it just gets worse. And I loved it. I couldn't put this book down. And since then, I've read a few more novellas by
I'm
him.
in.
There was one called Commodore, about 4 kids who go on a little bike ride to the local dump in a town called Sabbath because they heard a rumor of a car that's haunted. And they find the car in the dump, and guess what? Awful things happen to them.
It's haunted.
It's a combination of Stand By Me and from a Buick 83. I'm thinking like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, from a Buick.
Awful things.
Yeah.
And then I read another short story by him in a collection called Under a Pale Sky, called Soda Jerk. And I'm just going to full out spoil this one for you. It's about a girl moves to the town of Sabbath again.
Yeah.
And is immediately taken out on a date by Mr. Charming. There's this like a perfect 10. All the girls love this guy. He's, I don't know, he's high school age. He's got a convertible red car. He's very, very nice and kind, and takes her out for a date, takes her to the dump, takes her to the lake, takes her to a soda shop where she drinks a milkshake, and then awful things happen to her.
It was
really
a hot
awful
day, wasn't it?
It was a hot day. She should not have gotten that milkshake.
Bad idea.
He's a magnificent writer, and I can't wait to read more of his stuff. He has a book called Gothic about to come out, which I think is about a haunted desk.
Haunted desk. Of all things
Haunted
that you could
desk.
like haunticize. I don't know if that's a word, but we'll use
from
it.
the plot description, like someone inherits a desk and uses it to write, and the desk influences his writings to horrible effect. I can't wait to read it.
That's kind of cool. You know, that reminds me of too. And Don, speaking of taking back to a childhood, is it? It took me a second, but when you're talking about how somebody buys this haunted desk, again, I think this is more of a Canadian show. It's long time gone, but it's called Friday the 13th, the series, and it's about this. Oh, you've seen it? Okay, yeah. Robin Tunney is in it.
I know it.
Oddly enough, she is a distant relative of my girlfriend, which is kind of cool. So yeah, it's fantastic. And I'm like, when you talked about the haunted desk, I was kind of thinking about that. They had all these strange haunted items and things in their store that was haunted in that, and it's just some things you wouldn't guess. I'll never forget the Haunted Watch one. That was just probably one of my favorite episodes. So, but yeah, I guess, the haunted desk. I mean, I can only imagine.
From the plot description, it sounded like a version of a story I've seen other writers write. Like Stephen King wrote, it was made into an episode of Tales from the Dark Side with Harry Anderson about a word processor called The Word Processor of the Gods. And then there's a novella by the director of Shawshank and the Mist. What's his name?
Yeah, Frank Darabont.
Frank Darabont wrote a novella published by Cemetery Dance called Walpersky's Typewriter. And it's a demonically possessed typewriter that someone writes a movie script with. Yeah, it's out there. You should be able to find it. Bernie writes into the illustration. Cool. Don says, do you know what book got me into writing horror reading? Early 80s was The Howling by Gary Brandner.
25 pence. That's a good deal.
Nice.
You'd
be surprised how many classic horror films actually have books that you can find and read. I found a bad movie called It Came From Within, or The Beast Within, was a novel first that's absolutely gruesome. And I remember the first few chapters is about a door-to-door salesman who knocks on the wrong door and is captured and kept in the basement and fed scraps and becomes a cannibal and then escapes. And,
oh, jeez.
It escapes. At this point, he's in a bestial state. And it gets even more horrific. It's a nice family, or a husband and wife has a car accident. And while he's changing the tire. She wanders in the woods and is captured by this beastly man who rapes her, and she has a child 9 months later from that, and that child has a bestial nature and the beast within that comes out, sort of like a werewolf without the hair. But
That's very cool.
I couldn't escape the first chapter. It was just so horrifying. And I think there's a version of that, a Hammer film called Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed, where a man is kept in a prison cell by an evil lord who's having a banquet, and he wants to help. A homeless man comes in and begging for food, and they throw him in the dungeon. And then when someone misbehaves, they throw them in the jail cell with him. And he's never released, and he's treated terribly. And he rapes the servant girl who has a child that grows up to be Oliver Reed, who happens to be a werewolf now because of the bestial nature of the sexual assault she had suffered. Oh, this got dark real quick.
Yeah. I know, talking about the old stuff, eh? Like, it's amazing what they got away with back then. I mean, before censorship got a hold of everything.
Some people argue it's the best werewolf film ever made. You should see it. It's got great werewolf makeup, and it doesn't have the gypsy storyline at all. It doesn't have the star on the hand or any of that, or no wolfsbane. It totally goes a different direction. But he ends up climbing to the roofs of buildings and throwing burning bales of hay at mobs with pitchforks. It's got all the good stuff.
Good have to check that out, because I'm a sucker for a good werewolf movie. And my thing with the werewolf movie is I find that you can kill a decent werewolf movie with a terrible werewolf transformation. So hopefully, does this one have a good one that you remember?
A famous one. It's one of the best.
Famous ones. Okay.
I don't remember.
See if it holds up to American Werewolf.
It's hard to beat American Werewolf of London, the John Landis film, which had that Rick Baker special effects.
Oh, so
this
good.
is before that, but it's after the Lon Chaney stop motion special effects. They just add a little more hair, take another shot, add a little more hair, take another shot.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in between. They might do another trick like camera pans away, pans back. Oh, he's a werewolf now.
It was cool the way they did it with Rick Baker, I guess. He basically had it all full costume, but then he would just trim the hair until it was all the way gone. Then he would reverse it all, so it looked like it was growing.
Or you would pull the hair through the latex and then reverse film that. So instead of the hair going in, it's coming out of the latex.
Very cool. Yeah, and it was, I mean, I guess back then, I mean, it was something that they never even thought to consider before, that, doing all that reverse stuff. And I know you probably know about this. I think I think if you and I went toe to toe on a horror movie trivia, you might kick my ass with that kind of stuff. So, but I know with Michael Jackson's A Thriller, some of the shots in there were actually exactly the same as the shots that were American Werewolf in London, because don't know if you know the story at all, but I watched Rick Baker was on a podcast once, it's the Joe Rogan podcast, was talking a lot about that, how he just had a absolutely stupid schedule to be there. And I guess because his dancers, or the dancers rather, weren't going to be there till a certain amount of time for him to actually start doing all the makeup, there's all these other scenes that he's like, well, I'm not going to have time to do all this, so what do I do? So he used some of the stuff from Michael Jackson, like when he's looking at his hand in there. That's the hand from American Werewolf in London. When it closes in on Michael Jackson's ear growing, that's American Werewolf in London. And then I guess Rick Baker and a lot of his effects teams, when he first started to see the zombies first start to come out of the graves, that's all Rick Baker and his team, and he filmed all that stuff, I guess, for free, really, because he wasn't on the producer, I guess, Landis's clock at the time. And then it wasn't until the very end of it that he did all the makeup and the special effects and stuff for all like the dancers when they're doing their whole the musical number with Michael Jackson and his girlfriend, and which was, I always thought it was kind of a cool story.
I had the album on cassette. That was
yeah.
I loved Thriller. I didn't know any better.
Yeah,
my music taste has changed so much since then.
You know
But
what though? I
yeah,
mean,
I
it
still
still
like it.
stands up. It still stands
It
up. Like
does.
I watch it every year. You know, I get the buzz, of course, around Halloween. I'll watch it again. I'm like, this could have been made yesterday, and it
Well,
would have been just as brilliant. Like it's just, yeah,
how often do you
fantastic.
watch the Stephen King, Michael Jackson video?
Stephen King,
I
Michael
lost your
Jackson
volume.
video.
Right. You don't
What?
even know what I'm talking about because that's how
No.
bad
What?
it is. It's a ghost story video that Stephen King wrote for Michael Jackson, and they shot a long video, and it's out on YouTube. But it was supposed to be Thriller too. Let's get the King of Pop and the King of Horror together, and they just wish it never happened. Both of them.
Because I've seen Ghost. I mean, there's Ghost is a pretty good one too,
Not
and it's a pretty long
not
video.
Ghost the movie with. I'm talking about the music video for Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Is that
I
what
wonder
you're
if
talking
it's the
about?
same one. Yeah, because there's Michael Jackson he's actually gets made up as the guy that's in that,
Yeah,
who ends up playing the school teacher. Then is that the one that you're talking about, or
I think so. I'm
okay? Yeah,
trying to
I
blank
didn't realize that
bleach
was
it from my
Stephen King.
mind.
It's one of the ones I find that like it's really cheesy, but there's enough stuff in there that makes it kind of fantastic as well. You know, they got like the different zombies or the ghosts or whatever that flying all over the place, and when they start doing the dance number and they're crawling all over the ceiling and that, it was pretty cool. I thought as far as that goes. And there's like a couple of different variations of it I've seen. Yeah, I had no idea that Stephen King wrote that.
Hmm. We just went full circle back to Stephen King and music videos.
It all starts and ends.
We talked about Fangoria. I picked up issue number 2 off the newsstands. That's when I started reading Fangoria. I remember it was articles about Phantasm, the new movie coming out, and which I desperately wanted to see. I didn't get to see Phantasm. I believe it was released unrated or something. For some reason, I couldn't get to see it. Instead, I saw The Prophecy with the mutant bear. Do you know that movie?
No, I want to see it if it's got a mutant
Oh,
bear in it. That's
all right. So there are 3 movies that scared the shit out of me at 9. And one of them was The Prophecy, and it stars Talia Shar and Amanda Sante. The actor who played the doctor in The Thing, who's doing trying to save the guy who's having a heart attack, and the chest opens and bites his hands off.
yeah, it was great. Yeah,
He's in charge of a lumber yard in upstate like New York.
yeah.
And we don't know at the beginning, but he's using mercury to preserve the logs as they flow down the river. And the mercury is infecting
Makes
the
sense.
wildlife and mutating all the creatures. So we see giant tadpoles like this big, and there's someone catches a fish the size of a dinghy, and it's like a salmon. And there's a bear that's like 9 feet tall with his skin inside out. That's insane. Some people call him the man bear pig. He's just horrific looking, and he's mad, and he's going out killing people.
That sounds
And that
awesome.
bear was so horrific. And they made a full standing puppet version. It probably took 3 men to operate. And there's a long shot of him walking towards some people before he smacks a sleeping bag that explodes in a batch of feathers against a rock, killing the teenage girl inside. This bear
Nice.
hid in the dark corners of the house I lived in, along with the dog from Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1977 that had the wino's head on it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah,
There
I'd
was
have
a
to see it
dog
again,
that
but I think I
walks
know what
up,
you're talking about.
but it's got a bum's head and its beard, and the tongue licks its nose and barks at you. It's a terrible fake effect. It's the dog
That's
wearing a
great.
rubber head. But at 7, I fell for it. So that dog and that bear were in cahoots to get me.
And it clearly worked.
And they were controlled by the witch from Black Sabbath, which is a Mario Bava film from the 60s.
Yeah.
It's an anthology horror film hosted by Boris Karloff. And Boris Karloff plays a character in one of the 3 horror stories called the Wurderlack, which is sort of a version of the vampire. It can only eat its own family. And the family's waiting for their grandfather to come back because he's out hunting vampires. And he comes back a vampire, and they have to let him in, but they're pretty sure he's a vampire. And sure enough, he eats them. But there's another story called A Drop of Water, which is about a woman whose job is to clean and dress dead bodies, is called in to do a job on a rich widower who is a gypsy or like a fortune teller, and she's dead. And she has to clean and dress her body. So we get this scene where she goes into this mansion, and it's apparently she's a very old rich cat lady. Because there's cats everywhere. There's piles of cat piss everywhere. There's a mansion that's in terrible decay. And then you see the corpse lying on the bed, and the eyes are wide open and looking right at you. Right at you. And it's a fake doll old lady, and it's freaky as fuck. And what happens is she's cleaning the body and notices there's a ring on the finger and there's a fat ruby on it. And she takes it off and puts it in her pocket. And then you look back, there's a fly where the ring was. And the fly follows her home, where she has the ring. She's home alone. And that's when things happen, like chairs start rocking on its own. The sink starts dripping water. Even though she tightens it, it keeps dripping water. And it's a full half hour of this. Just hints.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, when I saw this, there's very few times when I remember being this scared, where I have to keep my eyes open and tell myself it's just a movie, where I'm gripping the armrests of my chair as tight as I can. And I'm absolutely terrified because she turns around and out from a corner comes the ghost of this corpse with the eyes open, and it's coming at her, but she's not walking. They pretty much put her on a board with wheels and wheeled her towards you, but you can't see her feet. But she's floating towards you, arms stretched out. I have a GIF on it on my computer that I play sometimes when I'm just like, this is scary like this. So she was, okay, so now I've got you. The witch ghost, the bear, the dog with the bum's head. If there was a room with a light off in my house, they were in the darkness, just out of sight, waiting to get me, and I had to run as fast as I could.
Jeez, no wonder why you're a bartender.
It's the most terrifying shit in my life, man. Those movies really, really got me, and you can't repeat that.
You really can't. And I mean, especially at such a fresh mind too, makes all the difference.
I think the Changeling was another horror film that got me with George C. Scott. And of all things to scare me, a rubber ball bouncing down the steps did it. A piano playing by itself. Those things really got me as a kid. Nowadays, I want to see the gore. I want to see someone's entrails being pulled out of a body, being bit by a dog, and have the dog run off with it.
Right.
Your guts spool out. I was like, if I had seen that as a kid, I probably would have thrown up.
And then come back while it's being chased by like a horde of zombies or something, wearing, I don't know, like Nazi uniforms and wielding bloody axes.
To go back to books, it's that kind of scary that I got from those movies that I described to you, that I got from Ramsey Campbell's stories. The Companion and The Chimney. And not very many writers can do that.
I think the scariest book that I've read, and I read it fairly recently, and he's actually, I'm pretty certain he's a member of the group as well. If not, he should be. He's an Australian author. I'm sure you've heard of him before, a guy named Aaron Dries. So he...
what's the name again?
Aaron Dries. So he's Australian. And a couple of his first books, the scariest one that I read is called The Fallen Boys. See if I find a title really quick here. Sorry, forgive me for a moment. Let's see if I can find it. It's 100% worth looking for.
Yeah, Rick, I'm having a blast, but I need to Go to the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely. We can pause this.
Break, or can you talk for 5 minutes and just give me a chance to do
Sure,
that?
you give me a chance to find this book.
All right. I'll be right back.
All right, sounds good.
What's going on?
Yeah, he's just had to go to the bathroom real quick.
Are you paused, actually?
No, there's one lady that's in here.
Cool.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. So I'm just gonna try to find the book here. So, and I'll wrap it up with him for this thing too.
He's totally KO'd.
All right, Don, just you and me. We'll see what kind of trouble we can get into while Hans is off in the bathroom. Forgive me for a moment, though, Don. I'm just going to turn around while I try to find this book. Have you heard of Aaron Dries? You're probably closer to him, continentally speaking, than I am. So yeah, he's from Australia. Fantastic new author. I'll see if I can find his book there. Because he also happens to have some pretty awesome covers as well. Where are you, Aaron? He's around here somewhere. No problem. Yeah, I've got a lot of people I work with actually hooked on his stuff.
Amanda said she still has some of his books.
All right, so see if I can find. Apologies for having my back to you here so much. Find it. Aha, there we go. I'll throw a few of them off of here. So yeah, no, he's fantastic. Now, have you? I know we were talking about it earlier, Don. The Girl Next Door. Have you read that book, Jack Ketchum, or have seen the movie?
You talking to me?
Not unless you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Obituaries. No, I haven't noticed that yet, actually. I was only on Books of Horror enough to scroll through it for a couple of posts, but I haven't seen that one. Who's the author of that one, Don? Right, yeah, it's definitely that kind of a book. It's one of the books you don't read it to enjoy it. It's more something you read to experience it. And since I've read that one, I've never read another book that hit me in the feels every which way than this book right here. So I did find the book. So thanks for the washroom break, Hans. You gave me a chance to find it. So, speaking of teddy bears, or bears at least. So there's that one. I think this is his first one here. This one's called House of Sighs. And then his most recent one here, it's called Dirty Heads. It's a novella. Just a thin little guy. Oops, make sure I get on there. But no, the House of, they're all fantastic books, but The Fallen Boys is just gut-wrenching. I mean, I would certainly put that up there with the pretty similar reactions to that one than The Girl Next Door. Of course, Girl Next Door is inspired by some true events and stuff, but this book, believe it or not, I would say that the girl next door has a happier ending than this one does. I mean, if you remember how The Girl Next Door ends, it's not much of a happy ending, but at least it's somewhat cathartic. Whereas this one here, there's nothing cathartic about it. It's just, yeah, it's terrible. The good thing is, though, unlike the Girl Next Door, you're probably not going to throw this one against the wall because you're going to be too much in shock to really move and have the motor skills to be able to pull that off. At least I was when I
The
finished
Girl
reading
Next
them.
Door is like a 200-page gut punch. It's
really is
absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and that one.
You should post your books, those books on the Books of Horror group, so I can find it again and well, don't do
Sure.
it just for me, but for
Yeah.
everyone.
No, I will. And
Here's
I'll
a
take
list.
Aaron and.
Aaron Bjergård, Daniel Volpe, Christopher Triana have written obituaries.
Oh, okay.
I did not know that.
Very cool. Yeah, Christopher Triana. That's. I mean, I'm not really. I've heard of all those guys, but Christopher Triana is the only one that I'm most familiar with because he was on. He did a podcast once with S.C. Mendez and Lucy Leitner. So S.C. Mendez, that's his author name, but then he publishes under Mark Chiccarone for Bloodbound Books. So he actually, both of them were on my podcast a little bit ago. They're great. Lucy's a fantastic author as well, and they had Christopher Triana on their podcast, and that guy is just outright hilarious. I mean, some of the stuff that he comes up with was just absolutely hilarious. So yeah, he seems like a pretty good dude.
2 splatter westerns
Okay.
that he wrote, and I think it's from A Cold Place for Dying, which I got from a Nightworms box.
Nice. They all died.
I haven't read any of them yet. I got to read those. Everywhere I look, I have a stack of books to stare at.
I know.
I'll be found dead under them, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got one. I do a lot of book reviews for Gauntlet Press as well.
Gauntlet.
They sent me
Barry Hoffman.
Yeah. Barry Hoffman. Yeah, he was on my podcast as well a little bit ago. But wicked guy. So I've been doing stuff with him for like 15 years, more than that or so. He's just an awesome guy and loves to send me his books, and I love to read them and review them. The latest one that he sent me, it's going to be a good one to get through, but it's a big one. I might die underneath this one if it was a physical book, but it's a mammoth 450-page book of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, and it's all of everything that went into the making of this one. So it's the actual book, of course, Fahrenheit 451, which is a great book. It's got tons of filler stuff, tons of notes, tons of sidebar stuff, and all jam packed full of things. So that's actually the next book that I need to start reading.
I'm a big fan of Ray Bradbury's. I read a lot of his books as a kid. Some of them I think I was too young for. Like I read Dandelion Wine, which is his coming of age novel. It has almost no supernatural aspect to it at all. Okay. Of course, I didn't know that when I was reading it. But yeah. I had his short story collections. S is for Spaceship and R is for Rocket. And I had the Illustrated Man and the Martian Chronicles. And of course, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Which are you familiar with the EC comics?
I was never much of a comic guy, to be honest. So not really, no.
Well, you can't deny their importance. EC Comics
sure.
Published horror and science fiction, amongst other things, in the 50s, and they did a lot of Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
Now, I didn't mean to cut you off on the Gauntlet, but I really wanted to talk about Ray Bradbury for a sec.
Sure.
And I love Fahrenheit 451, and I know that book he's got coming out. Is a collection of all the stuff. I have the Suntup edition of Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere behind me.
Is that the one that heats up or that changes if you add heat to it?
No, I don't think it had that trick. There's an asbestos cover. It's an old limited edition.
Yeah, that would be old, right?
There's Fantasia Press did a limited edition of Firestarter that's also covered in asbestos, and it's the grail of Stephen King collectors. I believe they cost $50,000 to $60,000 a copy now.
Just for something that could give you cancer.
Well, the Stephen King edition had a safe coating of, it looks like aluminum over the asbestos, whereas the Bradbury Fahrenheit 451, asbestos is real asbestos cover and could probably give you cancer if you breathed it. I always wanted to get Joe Hill's Fireman to come out as an asbestos edition to complete the set. It would make sense to me.
Right.
Now, so EC Comics, they did Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Haunted Fear, Weird Science, Weird Fantasy, all these great classic comics. And they were adapting Ray Bradbury's stories for their comics, but they didn't ask permission. They didn't credit Ray Bradbury. They just found the stories in the pulp magazines, wrote a script, published it. They did the Black Ferris Wheel that way, with artwork by Jack Davis. The Black Ferris Wheel is a short chapter that became Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Okay.
It's about two kids who escaped to go on a Ferris wheel and then the de-aging process. So Ray Bradbury wrote a letter to EC Comics praising them for those adaptations of his stories and how much he loved them. Only he wished they hadn't forgot to give him his name on the stories, and that if they would continue to do them, please put his name, and perhaps his checks got lost in the mail. And at that point on, there's like, okay, they'll put Ray Bradbury's name on it. Let's pay him. And that's how he handled it, which is so great. He just loved what they were doing enough. Please keep doing it, but let's do it legally, okay?
Yeah,
and I
have a
thought
little
that was
bit
really
of
nice.
dignity here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, that does sound like Ray Bradbury. I know. One of the cool things when I was chatting with Barry a bit ago, Barry Hoffman from Gauntlet, is he had actual like relationships with these amazing people and that, and would often talk about Ray Bradbury and just amazingly kind, generous people.
He had a similar relationship with Richard Matheson.
Yeah,
He's published a lot of Matheson books. He's got this small stable of writers that he's stuck with and continues to publish.
Yeah.
F. Paul Wilson
Mhm.
and maybe William F. Nolan, who recently passed away.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Did that. He did a lot of
great writers.
Jack Ketchum's. Well, he did a good handful of stuff with Jack Ketchum as well. That's one I always kind of wish he would. Be really cool to go back and maybe pull some of his other books. And I'm not sure who's dealing with his with Dallas's estate at all on that, but it'd be neat to go back and kind of reissue some of his books out there again, just to get them resurfaced into the world. And
Dark Regions is supposed to publish a limited edition of Offspring to follow up their limited edition of Off Season.
oh, okay, that'd be good.
Cemetery Dance published The Woman.
Yeah.
And one of my favorites is called I'm Not Sam. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
This is a novella by Lucky McKee and Jack Ketchum.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of their most disturbing books. And it's not a gory book at all. There's almost no blood in it, which is unlike either of them. But it is makes you very uncomfortable. It's I'm Not Sam is about a man who's married to his wife, Samantha. And he doesn't know that she suffers from multiple personality disorder because she wakes up one day and has the mind of a 12-year-old girl. And she says, I'm not Sam. And she won't revert back. All of a sudden, he has to take care of this 12-year-old girl in a full-grown woman's body. And he has to adapt to that. And he still loves her, and he's still hoping his wife will come back. But he's dealing with it in a very mature way. Everything's being done right. He's taking care of her. He's trying to help her. Then it gets a little sinister because a husband has needs. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, very uncomfortable.
I'm kind of going back to like Right to Life and Weed Species and whatnot.
Ladies' Night. Have you read that one?
I think that's one of the few that I haven't read of his. I think The Crossings and Ladies' Night might be the only actual novels that I haven't read of his.
I haven't read She Wakes, which is
a
a science fiction book.
Yeah, it's his only supernatural one that he does.
And The Crossings is his Western.
Yeah, that was the first, or that was the one, I guess, that Stephen King mentioned when Stephen King was getting one of his awards. It sort of put Ketchum on the maps for a lot of people. So
Stephen King listed a bunch of books in Danse Macabre back in 1981 when that book came out.
Yeah.
One of them was Thomas Tessier's The Nightwalker. Have you read any Thomas Tessier?
I have not. No.
You got to get this book. I became a huge fan. I've collected all of his books since. He's still alive. I believe he's an English professor in Connecticut.
Okay.
But he used to live in England, and he and Ramsey Campbell published poetry.
Huh.
I have all 3 of those poetry books. I was hoping I could just grab it off the shelf. Oh well. Anyway, The Nightwalker, about a Vietnam vet who returns to England, and he has issues controlling his rage. You got to read him. He's one of those books that I picked up randomly just to read a chapter and end up reading the whole book again. And
Nice.
only a few books of that. Off Season's another one that does that to me. Oh, I'll just read a chapter, and then the next book I'm reading, everything else gets put aside. I have to read it all the way through.
Have you read his? And I could see it being a good movie. I think it would make a good movie as well. Ketchum's Cover. Speaking of Vietnam
Cover?
vets.
He's growing weed in the sticks, and some campers stumble upon it. I'll
Yeah,
never
it's
forget that
almost like,
scene.
don't piss
This
off Rambo.
girl, she goes swimming to escape him and comes out of the lake covered with leeches.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
such
a
a
good
good. Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones of his. He always said that was his most, at least at the time, his most ambitious book.
Now that
Have you
that
ever
book
read-
actually reminded me of Richard Lehman. I love
Okay.
Richard Lehman. If you haven't read any of his, you really ought to.
I've only read one of Lehman's books. It was probably one of the scariest books I've read. It was called The Endless Night.
That's one you should start with.
Yeah, no,
Is that the one where
fantastic.
these guys who are like, let's go into a house and kill everyone with axes, and
Yeah, and
then one
some of them
survivor
go,
escapes, and they keep trying to kill the survivor.
yeah, the girl and her dad kind of escape, and then they're basically driving across country to chase them down and get them. And
I remember I read that one in one sitting, so I don't remember all the details perfectly.
that would have
That
been an
one's
endless night for you. Holy smokes! Yeah, that was just a wicked book. It was very well done.
There's another one with a Ouija board and cannibalistic inbred rednecks that live in the woods. That's brutal. But I think The Cellar is the one that made me the most uncomfortable. And it wasn't the monsters and the rapiness of it. There was one of the side characters who was a pedophile, and he captures a victim. And there's a
Oh, geez.
detailed scene of that in the bathtub, and I just like, I don't want to read this. I don't. Give me, bring me the monsters. This is too disturbing.
Yeah,
Stop
exactly.
that. He didn't even use the word rump, but it's Layman really knows how to push those buttons. But my favorite of his has to be The Wilds, which was the first novella published by Cemetery Dance.
Okay. First one, interesting.
First is number 1 of the novella series. It's very hard to find. I think you can probably find a used copy for $400 and up. It's hard to find.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you never know the cost of some of these books now. Like I know I've got some nice, Brian Keene books and that are like, you go online and I mean it's ridiculous what the price are. Some of these people are asking for.
Okay, the collecting question. Yeah. There's some authors you have to make a decision. I'm going to read them or I'm going to collect them.
Yeah, and I mean it's almost like if only I was in a bit of a different spot at the time. I mean, of course Brian Keene's putting out his Labyrinth series, and I guarantee when he gets all 7 of those out, if you've got the limited editions, it'll easily be worth twice the cost. I mean, that's one of the books where it's like it's probably not a bad idea to buy 2 copies. One to keep and the one to pay for the one that you keep.
But I discovered F.
It's
Paul
all
Wilson in the
fun.
Repairman Jack series. I'm like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
collect this author. He seems pretty cool. Then I found out how many books he's written,
Yeah.
and how many limited editions out there, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to read him. And I just got the paperbacks I actually went to the library and read all the
Yeah.
Repairman Jack books.
Here's
I
a
saved
question
myself
for you then.
store.
Maybe we could do even a trade or something. I don't know. His early years trilogy that he did with Gauntlet, the three of them. Do you happen to
Repairman
have?
Jack, the early years. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you happen to have any arcs of those?
I have no Wilson arcs.
Because I've got the first two. I would love to get the third one, but he doesn't have that anymore.
Barry is one of those publishers who he'll come up with those arcs at the last minute, and then he'll be selling them for $75.
Yeah.
And I actually tried to buy a few from him. I wanted to buy a Bradbury arc. He wanted $75, but by the time I sent him the email, they were already sold out.
I know it's crazy how fast they go. I mean, he does them in his newsletters as well. Like I imagine you probably
I
subscribe
got the
to
newsletter.
him.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and he's always
newsletter.
talking about. Yeah, and he always talks about like things that he just finds in his. And I mean, from chatting with him, I don't, I believe him. I don't like he's not coming across like I'm just going to put him aside and I'll sell when I need the money. It's like, oh, I just happened to find these, but I truly believe that because he's told me he's like he's got whole storage rooms full of books that he'll look for something else and he'll just come across something else. He's like, holy crap, I can't believe I still have any of these left, and he'll put them up for sale. So I know that whatever he puts it up and says he just happened to find them, it's legit. He just
Now,
happens to find
Cemetery
them.
Dance does the same thing. We're searching the warehouse and we found a box of these books that have been long out of print, and we'll sell them to you now at this marked up price.
Yeah.
And I always wonder how much of that is with a grain of salt and how much of it is they really did just find it, or did they store it with the intention of selling it later?
Yeah,
You really
I
can't
think
tell.
I think it's legit. I mean, even like talking to Barry about him, I'm pretty sure like if it's a con, it's a great con. He sold me, and I think we had the same thing with Rich as well. I mean, yeah, I was wondering the same thing too, but I think that's a very authentic reaction to have is to wonder about that kind of stuff. But
I always have to wonder a little bit, but
and as far as the markup price, I
benefit of the
mean,
doubt.
yeah, and I mean, you got to know, I guess, what people are willing to pay for it. I mean, that's I guess what drives the market. I mean, I covered one of the books, and you'd mentioned Frank Darabont earlier. I had a chance to chat with Frank a
No
couple of
kidding.
years ago, I guess, which was super cool. And we talked about, and the reason I talked to him, I mean, Barry's just an awesome guy too. Like he's put me in touch with some pretty cool people. Frank Darabont being one of them. And I must have chased him down for about 2 months after I got the okay for the interview. Barry put out a book called Hope and Miracles, which was, the two screenplays from Darabont, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile. And, so I had a chance to chat with him about that book. And the actual, if you subscribe to his newsletters, you know where I'm going with this.
The limited edition was signed by Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks, Morgan Freeman, Stephen King, Darabont, whole bunch of other ones. The one that they couldn't get, I think it was actually signed by just brain fart. He plays Delaney. I'm kicking myself. I didn't think we were going to go here, so I wasn't thinking about him at all.
Tim Robbins?
Thank you. Yeah, Tim Robbins. So I think he actually signed it as well at the very, very last minute. And I think he signed it only because Morgan Freeman signed it or something. One of the ones I remember, Barry. I actually have the podcast of it up. I mean, I'd almost have to go back and listen again to remember. But one of them signed at the very, very last minute. And I think it was Morgan Freeman. That's who it was. They thought they were going to have to go ahead without him. And they had Tom Hanks' signature. And I guess Barry had mentioned to Tom Hanks' agent that, I couldn't get him to sign it. I've been asking him so many times and that, but I can never get him to sign. Unfortunately, time is up and we have to carry on. And I guess he's like, but, then something happened. I guess I should have just said, Tom asked him. Yeah, absolutely. So then he got Morgan Freeman's signature at the last minute. But the book itself, I guess, like the platinum edition of it, I think it went for something like $4,500, $5,000, something like that.
There was a lottery, and I actually won. I got the opportunity to buy that, and I just didn't have the money. So I wrote to some other collectors, "Hey, do you want this? I can get it, and then send it to you." And they passed. So then I wrote an email saying, I can't get it. Then my friends contacted me again. We do want it. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
It was like $4,000.
Well, and it had the actual a rock pick made from the tree that was on the set of the Shawshank Redemption. So apparently
all
a
the bells
fan,
and whistles. Oh,
all of them. And Tyson Blue, the editor for that book, I had a chance to chat with him as well, and let's just say he got me. I'm not going to say it's just inappropriate, even as I'm thinking it. But he got a copy of that book too. So the only people that got gifted a copy of this book was Frank Darabont and Tyson Blue. And when I chatted with Frank, it was over a telephone. But when I chatted with Tyson, it was over like what we're doing here. And he had a copy of the book, and he went and got it for me. And he was showing it to me, and it was just gorgeous. Like the marquise, in particular, of that they did of Michael Clark Duncan. The silhouette of him in there with behind the bars was just like hits you in the guts. Like it's just beautiful. Like just a nice work of art. It was so nice.
I love the books that get the directors and the movie people to sign. There's a book by Mick Garris that I had that was signed by Toby Hooper and Clive Barker and George Romero that I really loved, and Stephen King. I was like, wow, I got all these big names together on one page.
Yeah.
And of course, I had to sell it. Couldn't keep it. But I think my favorite might be The Exorcist, numbered from Santa, which William Peter Blatty, he was already passed away before this book came out.
Okay.
But they got William Friedkin to sign it.
That's cool.
It's very cool. A little slice of something. I like that.
Yeah, and apparently that's the Ray Bradbury book as well. It's kind of interesting that one of the people that's going to sign that, because they did a forward to him from a long time ago, is William Shatner.
Another publisher just did an Illustrated Man limited edition, and they had some signature sheets from Ray Bradbury, but not enough to cover all of them. So let's say there were 500 copies of the book and maybe 200 signature sheets signed by Ray Bradbury before he passed away. So he randomly inserted them, and you had to buy the book for $200, and when you get it, you find out if you got the signature or not. If you contacted the publisher requesting the signature, guaranteed you will not get it. That's what the publisher told them.
That's a pretty quick way to run a business. Wow.
It's like, if you're lucky, you got the signature. If you're not lucky, you got a beautiful book, but no signature. I was like, gosh, I don't think I want to gamble $200 for that. But
right, yeah. If I'm paying a couple $100 for a book, it better have a signature. So, hell, if I'm paying $60 for a book, it better have a signature. We're talking. I'm cheap.
That's a touchy subject when you talk about how much have you paid for a book.
Yeah.
Especially for a book you've already read. I'm not going to say, but
yeah, I've got not too embarrassingly, I guess, I've got a book that I've already read that it was gifted to me, actually. My thanks, Mom. Got this as a Christmas present the other year. It's a limited edition. It's speaking of Barry again. I got it from him. Poppy Z. Bright's The Lost.
I want that.
It's fantastic. It's I think just around here somewhere.
Poppy Z. Bright, now known as Billy Martin, is a member of Books of Horror.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Find my books on the very top.
Okay, where is that one up here? Where is she? I'm not seeing her right now for some reason. I gotta move her. But yeah, I've still got her in cellophane up there. So I figured I'll open that book up and read it once.
What's this one called? Swamp Fetus, and another called Exquisite Corpse.
Yeah, I haven't read Exquisite Corpse. That's just fantastic, and I mean, as Poppy Z. Bright, the definitely one of my top 3 collections ever is Poppy Z. Bright's Wormwood. It's got a second name to it too. I think Wormwood was the original title, I believe, and then there was another title that went out after that. I don't remember what it was, but just some of the best storytelling ever. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous stuff. Collection of short stories. Oh, Don has another question here as well.
Edward.
Have we read Edward Lee? Shocking book I read was The Backwoods. Disturbing too. Yeah, I know it's he's one of the ones that I know he did a lot of collaborations with Jack Ketchum, but I've not read Edward Lee yet. That's
I got an Ed Lee collection from the library before I bought any of his stuff, and it was paperback collections long out of print and really hard to find now. I'm trying to remember the title, but it had some of his most famous short stories like Mr. Torso and Header. Really, really gruesome, sexual and gory stories.
he was very much along those lines. I think very much like from what I understand, similar to Richard Lehman rather, but maybe a little bit gorier.
A lot more extreme, and not afraid to tell a story in bad taste. He's not afraid to go where.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of authors that aren't afraid of that. They just don't care. And
Yeah.
when they do care, they write really good stuff, but they're willing to not care. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of times, yeah, like they'll just write kind of for them.
Or this is for the fans. They've done some like try to gross each other out. There's a famous, I'm not sure which convention. I think it's the Stokers, where they hold a gross out contest.
Yeah, that's
And
Wrath James White's. What the heck is it? It just happened too.
Yeah,
that one. I'll think of it in a second.
I would love to. I wish there were video recordings of them reading these stories out loud. I'd watch that, or they were published somewhere, and I would read that. But they don't. They just write the story, and they say it there, and that's it.
Yeah, who won? Actually, was a member of Books of Horror won that one not too long ago.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Bridget Nielsen. Yeah, she won. She won the gross out contest. This one, KillerCon. That's it, KillerCon.
I have an idea for a story. Maybe I should write KillerCon.
Yeah.
I haven't done any horror conventions for a long time, but I wanted. The last one I did was 3 years ago. Was the Haverhill Merrimack Valley Halloween Book Festival in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And that's where I saw Jeff Strand and Grady Hendrix and Brian Keene and Laird Barron. But I was there to see Owen King.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
He's signed my art. Too. He is. Owen and Joe. I've met them both. Now, Owen signed my Sleeping Beauties arc, and I asked him to draw a little doodle of a moth on it, and he did. He was super nice.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview him once through emails for his book Double Feature. I think that was the first one. That's just a mammoth of a book. It's not a horror book. It's just a book, but very good storytelling.
I like his stuff. I don't know. I wasn't 100%. He did the scripts or some of the scripts for the new version of The Stand. He co-wrote that.
Oh, okay.
Which it was a show I really, really loved the book.
Yeah.
I kind of like the first version of the movie, but that last one, I couldn't stand it. I had to watch it all the way through.
No pun intended.
Oh, I hated it.
Oh, that's
I'm not afraid to say that. I'm sorry, Owen. Oh, so was it Sleep Disorder, Ed Lee and Jack? Ed Lee and Jack Ketchum did co-write some stuff.
Sleep Disorder rings a bell.
Disorder. Why am I thinking of Weed Species?
I don't know. Well, that's one that he did basically about the Bernardo case. That was just a standalone book from Ketchum.
Yeah. I have a bunch of Ed Lee chapbooks. I've got Mr. Torso and Header. I got a bunch of those. And I have some of his novellas.
I just love the chapbooks and that too. I mean, just kind of going back to that. I mean, it's just, I think it's such a cool way too for authors to be able to diverge a little bit, maybe write something a little bit different, just kind of a one-off thing. It's a good marketing thing. I mean, I've got one little one from, I believe it's from Deadhead Press. It used to be directly behind me here. Dead Snow.
Joe R. Lansdale's?
Yeah, Joe Orlando. What a great little story about the Wendigo. Like, it's just creepy and just the perfect length. You're in, you're scared, you're out.
I love Lansdale.
Yeah.
He's another author who
fantastic.
is so prolific. I had to make the decision. I'm just going to read. I'm not going to collect. I can't afford. I don't have the shelf space.
Right.
But I read most of the Happen Leonard books. I grew up reading his comics. He did some amazing comic books. And he wrote some Jonah Hex comics that were really dark.
Oh, okay.
Now, he got into a big legal battle with Joe and Edgar Winter. Do you know who they are? The rock stars who do that song, Frankenstein.
Okay.
So they're like albino and really skinny, freakish. And I met one of I read Edgar Winter during my time working at the House of Blues. I've got stories. I've got so many stories about the House of Blues. If you like blues music and rock and roll, I got your stories. Edgar Winter, who had a show at the House of Blues, and it was sold out, but we couldn't get him out of his trailer bus, assuming he was doing some kind of drug that was instantly addictive every time you did it.
Yeah.
And then he finally, 2 hours after the show was supposed to start, went up on stage, did like 3 songs, including Frankenstein, and then went back to the bus.
Oh, Jesus.
He's a rock legend.
Oh,
anyway, he has a few troubles. Joe Lansdale is a big fan and he created these albino brothers in the Jonah Hex comic. And they were a little too close to comfort for the Winter brothers, who sued DC Comics for defamation and slander.
Whatever happened with that? Did Joe win, or?
They sued Lansdale and DC Comics. I don't think those stories have been reprinted since.
Damn. So I'm guessing that was, they probably won or settled at a court and just took their hands off of it.
I don't remember exactly how it all went down at the end, but for a long time I was like, man, those comics might be worth a few dollars now. They were just great stories.
It would be if you had them now.
I think Lansdale's first published book was a Batman novel. Very hard to find now.
Yeah, and I love just his titles alone. I mean, they're just fantastic. Like apparently he was telling me, did a podcast with him a bit ago there, and he was talking, I guess, at least in the early years, one of the ways that he would get his titles and some of his crazy ideas for stories is his wife would go and collect newspaper headlines from like completely different parts of life and completely unrelated whatsoever. And then she'd be like, here, write a story about this. And he would write a story about this thing that would happen that really shouldn't have happened. And that, when you think about the Happy Leonard series too, a lot of the stories that they have are just absolutely just so friggin' bizarre.
I love them. I love that. They're so readable and you can rip through them one after the other. So I thought the first a little tough, but once you get into it and you know the characters, it's just fun to watch them go through the motions from book to book. You can read one and put it down 4 hours later and be finished with it, and it's so satisfying. Like,
did you read this last one that he put out? It was
Honky Tonk Samurai.
No, it was this collection that he did. It was actually what the heck is it? I got it on my e-reader, so I don't have it at the back of my desk. It's Continuing Troubles or something like that. Let me just double check that here real quick.
It has a new collection called
There's
Wet
about
Juju.
6 of them. I think this one comes out after that.
Oops. I gotta fix my shelf.
I know, it's happened to me too.
So I was just trying to get this. Little Green Book of Monster Stories by
Nice.
Joe Lansdale.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
believe I just caused
Yeah, the color
a
collections
book
are great.
avalanche. That's what I mean when I say the books. I'll be behind dead underneath all my books. I
I
just want to
don't.
fix
Just
that
all you
now.
see is like this discombobulated hand sticking up with the bookmark. So I just went on his
Basically.
Wikipedia page and see if that tells me. I should know this one because I just read it. Not just read it, but it was the most recent one I read. It's the reason I got together and talked to him. I don't remember what it's called though.
You can't tell from
I've
there,
got to
but
read the bottoms. He tells me that's one that I should probably read.
about 30 books just fell off my shelf, including all my Bachmans.
Oh no, you're gonna have to read them all now as you put them back.
It's due for a reshelving.
Let's see if I can.
Here's an author you don't hear about much. Rex Miller.
Rex Miller. Okay.
He wrote a book called Slob about 300-pound serial
Oh,
killer.
okay. Yeah, and he's got the Slob, Son of Slob or something.
Chain Gang is the sequel. I'm just going to keep showing these as I stack them neatly. Oh, here's a winner.
Sure. Nice. Rage. That was the other one I couldn't think of before.
It's a UK Running Man. These are in really cherry
That's a nice
condition.
cover.
My battery is very low. Hold on a sec.
Yeah. What the heck is that book called?
I might have to end this. I don't know if my cord will reach.
Moon Lake.
Oh, here you
Well,
are.
that's so. I'm trying to remember the book of Joe. I'm sure it was something to do with the. There was a continuing stories of Hap and Leonard, but I'm looking on his Wikipedia page, and I can see Moon Lake, but for some reason I don't see the latest collection here. That's really bugging me because I feel bad because I really should know that one. Oh, wait, short story collections. It'll be in there.
You should put
You
this
would
on
think,
your list.
but it's not.
You have one. Slob by Rex Miller.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard really good things about that one.
I want a limited edition from like a major publisher.
Nice.
Do that one. All right. My books are in better condition now. Have you heard of Nick Cutter?
I
You know who
have.
Nick Cutter
You know,
is?
I know who he is, and I got a funny story about Nick Cutter. Is that I don't know if you remember it all, but maybe 2 years or so ago, I'm like, you know what? I want to get back into it. It's been a little while since interviewed or did a lot of reviews, and I want to get a collection of them going. So I did a shout out on the Books and Forward. I said, hey, I'm looking. If anybody got any new releases out? I'd love to, cover your books, kind of thing. And he was one of the people that got in touch with me. And out of all the
Nick
books
Cutter
I picked, Nick Cutter did. And I picked a few books to do. Or wait, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Carver Pike. Carver Cutter.
All right, that sounds right. Because I don't think
Yeah.
Nick Cutter's in the group.
Okay,
His real name is
Carver Pike
Craig
was.
Davison.
Okay.
I think we're off his radar. I've been trying to. Really trying to
he
get
needs
his
to get in
attention. All right. Pile of books here.
Yeah, but I know Nick Cutter, though, or Carver Pike rather, got in touch with me, and as did a few other people. I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick a couple of people, then I'll get back to them. And I remember I passed on him specifically, Carver Pike, because I went on, I'd never heard of the guy before. Looks like there's like 30 books out there, and I'm thinking to myself, this must be like books by number or something. How good could a guy be that I was completely, misaligned with my thinking. But I'm like, how can a guy that I never heard of before have so many books out? I don't know about that. So I went and read a couple of other people's books. Little did I know that I've since gotten to know him a little bit better in that, and I've got to know a lot more about his books, and it sounds like he's just a fantastic author that I really need to read as well, amongst all the other ones.
Oh, yeah.
So, if you're okay, Hans, would you be okay wrapping it up? Because my girlfriend came up with my little guy a little bit ago. He has passed out,
Sure.
and she just gave me the signal, which she was nice about it because usually I get something thrown at me. So that's
We've already gone an hour and a half longer than I expected. But
I don't know. It's been awesome. It's funny, right? But we'll have to do this again sometime because we came on here to talk about books of horror, and we've only mentioned it a couple times. Nice. I love that book. That might be my favorite Stephen King book. It was just not too man enough to admit this, but oh really?
When I was 13, I read this, and I drew that cartoon.
You drew that. Very nice. Well done.
I drew that. I drew remarks, little cartoons that were mostly Peanuts inspired mashups of Stephen King. I did one Calvin and Hobbes for Christine, and I gave them away. It's the only one I have left. But I took pictures and put them on social media.
Okay.
And they kept going around and around until Stephen King tweeted one of them.
Jesus, that's pretty cool.
It was my Salem's Lot, and you've got Charlie Brown looking at the window and Linus floating behind the window tapping with little fangs. And Charlie Brown's going, "Good grief!" And I guess Stephen King really liked it.
That is awesome. If you have a picture of it, you should share it on the group. I'd love to see that.
Sure. I've shared it before. I'll do a post of my cartoons for Stephen King. Rick, I had a blast.
Yeah, me too. And then thank you, Don, for joining us. That's super cool. So hopefully we'll do this again, and you'll follow the cookie crumbs, so to speak, and be able to find us again. This is a lot of fun, and it's nothing against the books of horror, but I might have almost had more fun because we talked about so many other things besides the book of horror. So this has been great. It's my favorite kind of conversations. Why I like doing it this way. It's so much better than just over the phone or email questions.
We didn't talk about books of horror as much as we could have. Well, tough. We'll have to do it again.
Exactly. So now that we know that we couldn't blow the ship up, we're going to have to try harder next time. And
it's one hell of an ego stroke to be interviewed, Rick.
Cool.
Thank you for that experience.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well. And I'm really surprised that nobody's had John to do this before, because that's always been my thing. It's the reason I got into doing podcasts is that when I put out my book, I was trying to get on other people's podcasts, and they kept telling me, no, we only do fiction. We don't really do nonfiction, and we only do this and that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of crappy. Like, one of the things that I love the most about horror is that it's so accessible. And I thought, well, if you're not going to have me, then this probably sounds wrong, but I'll have myself. I'll create an environment. I'll create a platform where it's like, as long as you're creating horror, this is the place for you, kind of thing. Because I think it's got sort of the all incestuous nature to it. Where it kind of feeds onto each other, and it's all part of the other one. I think, and it all breeds. It all breeds into the same heap of horror, I guess. And I mean, the books of horror, as we did at least touch on before, has been so influential. And I mean, it's literally helped to launch careers. It's helped to improve careers. It's helped to break the backs of many bookshelves. And it's just a fantastic thing. I think it's a really, it's got a really good solid place in the horror community, I think, as a whole. And it's, in the industry as well. I think it's not too far-fetched to suggest that it's got a good place, a good solid place in the industry. So,
I'm very proud of Books of Horror as a group, and I don't say it. How do I put this? I think it's found its place in the world of the horror community, and I think it's becoming important as I see it grow and I see it being used in different ways. I see people posting their podcasts and their interviews in our group, meaning to me that it's become a place where people expect to find each other, even if they don't know each other yet. They know that if they come to Books of Horror, they'll find kindred souls. They'll find people who also love this stuff, and they can learn about all these great books and stuff. And I'm lucky every time I have a chance to contribute in more ways than just deleting bad posts or being a glorified doorman. It seems like I do like 75% of the time I'm just clicking people in. I spend so much time doing that, going over every person who requests to join. And you should know, everyone who sees this, I only accept about 1/3.
No kidding. Wow.
Out of like 100, maybe 40 get accepted because they don't answer all the questions. You have to say, I will not self-promote. I will agree to follow the rules. And if you just name the author of Frankenstein or name a book of horror, it's the easiest question in the world. But if you write yes, 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 something tells me you're not answering the questions. You just want there to access our list of 25,000 members.
Exactly.
And I'm going to fiercely protect that.
And if you can't follow the first rule, you're not going to get a chance to even try to follow the rest of them.
At the same time, not to be a hard ass saying, well, I can always remove them if they misbehave. I'll let them in. So it's not strict. But that's most of what I do. I'm just a doorman. But every time I get to contribute
I appreciate it.
On that note, welcome to Books of Horror. Thank you, Rick. That was an awesome interview. And have a great day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks to you as well, Hans. So again, we're going to have to do this again some other time. I really appreciated it. And it's cool to see that you're a super passionate guy, and that shows in the group. And I had no idea that you're part of so many other groups as well. And you're clearly a walking
number one. Always come back to this one. But I like to watch movies with my buddies, and so we're open to new members to that group too if anybody wants to join. There you go. There's my self-promotion. The Halloween Horror Club is my book club, my horror movie club.
Okay, cool. I'll put a link down below when this goes up as a podcast in a little while. I'll get back to you on that, Hans. Or maybe if you don't mind emailing me, I'll make sure I got all the links down there properly.
I have a list of stuff I got to send you already.
Please do.
All right, Rick. Take care.
Okay, you as well. Take care.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, Don, for participating in the questions. Mucho gracias. And you have yourself a wonderful night.